Hi there. Just wanted you to know there's some technical difficulties happening in chambers right now, so just bear with us. It'll be just a few minutes.
No problem.
For those of you who just joined us, there are some technical difficulties happening with the equipment in chambers, and hopefully it'll be just a few minutes.
I don't know where that is. I had to remove my own tree.
You are all set to begin.
Thanks, Alyssa.
That's what Charlotte's here. You what?
Right, or expressions. So list.
What are we waiting for?
I'm getting everything. Welcome, everybody, to our second budget session of this season, looking at next year's proposed budget 2022. I'm calling this meeting of the Finance Committee to order at 6:48 here on November 16th. And we're going to start looking at human rights, or at least rather the budget for human rights. And so that is page 75 in your budget books.
Same as yesterday.
All right, good evening. How are you tonight? We're good. Join the club. All right. So anything big happening with the budget for human rights?
No, it's good. Same as it was last year. No change.
Same as it was last year, and is that an adequate amount
Yes, for the time being.
for the time being? Does that mean you expect something to come up, or is this,
Well, you never know.
never know, right? Okay. Any questions?
What was your year like with COVID and everyone in the city? Did you see an increase in any complaints or?
Not necessarily complaints, but inquiries, a lot of tenants and landlords, especially regarding the eviction moratorium. You know, what landlord can do, what a tenant can do, stuff like that. I had much more of those type of calls.
Luana, how many people do you have in your department?
Yes, just me in the department, but we have 6 machines, that's volunteers.
Anything else? Anything else?
So the commission, I'm sorry,
Go ahead.
so the commissioners, then they take on, they also help you with calls and inquiries that come in as well too.
Yeah, I gather all the information and if something needs to be discussed, because a lot of times it's just information that people are looking for, which I have in the office. But if there is any like cases or things of that nature, then I'll call a meeting and we can discuss it.
All right, is that it then?
Well, thank you.
Great, thanks for coming out tonight.
Yep, have a good night.
The envious if we get to go and break it down
Yes.
or go to sleep. All right, next is communications. That would be Summer Smith.
What page you got?
42. Hello, Summer. 42. Yep. Central Communications is how it's in the book. So there's you in the department, right?
Just me.
Uh-huh. And then, so this regular pay, the increase here is increase in your salary. Uh-huh. And do you know what that's based on?
I don't.
Have you ever done a performance review?
No.
No, okay. Do we have any data that shows what folks in your same position do, get paid in other cities?
I don't know that.
Okay, all right. And then it looks like one other thing that's got some difference here is the contracted services going up $3,000.
Yes, we put more in the budget this year to, we're really trying to ramp up our translation and our interpretation for public meetings and for, we hope to put out a newsletter in Spanish in the near future. So we're really trying to work on our translation. So that will probably just be a drop in the bucket for translation services, but that's what that number reflects.
What do you mean drop in the bucket? That doesn't cover all the cost?
It doesn't, and a lot of times it comes out, for meetings, it'll come out of the project budget or the grant funding and things like that. So this is for, if we need to do a mailing or we need to do, certain communications that need to be in Spanish right away. This will help us, get that done in a timely manner.
Do you use any tools, any platforms that you subscribe to help you do your job better? Like a PR, to get press releases out, PR syndication service.
We don't, no, we just use the local press. We use the mayor's newsletter, we use our social media, post everything on our website. So it's all really local based. We don't really put anything out on the wire.
And if you, challenge has always been to communicate to our community, is that a frustration that we don't have it's hard to reach everybody?
It's a challenge
It's a
for
challenge.
sure. Yeah, I take that really seriously and,
Right.
I'm always open to new ideas for people who, have ideas on how to get to populations that maybe we're not reaching.
Right.
I think Facebook is good in that way because people share things and then it spreads to their networks. So that helps.
And how many people subscribe to the newsletter?
So the newsletter, I think it's about 2,500.
2,500.
Yeah, but for Facebook, we have I want to say 11,000 followers, 11,000 people like the page.
Right.
So that does have a far reach.
I'd like to see, that newsletter is such an important communications piece to our residents. And 2,500 out of 24,000 people, to me, we need to expand, somehow get more people to look at it. There's so much valuable information on it. So I don't know how that's done exactly, but, it'd be great if more residents use that, use 311, to file complaints, DPW and stuff.
Is the newsletter on social media?
It is. We put it up on the Facebook page, but the way Facebook operates is that it doesn't like to drive users away from the page. So that tends to be the least prominent. I posted on Friday right after I sent the newsletter out. And so Facebook doesn't like people it doesn't aggregate it in the same way that it does our other posts. So it gets some click-throughs and it gets some signups from there, but not as much as we'd like.
Are you able to communicate to residents through other departments, like the water department? When someone gets their water department bill, could there be a little notice to say, hey, keep in touch with what's going on, subscribe to the city newsletter?
I can't speak to the water department, but I do. So just this year we put info at Kingston, the email address on the homepage, and so I'm getting tons of emails now for people with just really general questions. So I think that's been really nice. I think people who don't know how to search through every department to find what they need can just go hit that info, and then it comes right to me, and I can help people get to where they need to go.
So I have another question. If with the ARPA funds, I know one of the things that we're talking about is to use some of that funding for economic development and maybe messaging to help our our business community, I guess, to attract more people or more tourists here. If we were to direct money, would that be your responsibility?
I guess that would be up to the mayor.
So Summer, you said that you don't know what the increase or the raise is based on
Yeah, this is just a part of the mayor's.
his budget. Yeah, but what are your feelings about it? What do you think?
I mean, I'm grateful for any raise. Yeah. No. Much more to say about it.
Any other questions?
Well, I'm happy to see you get your in for a raise because I think you're doing a really good job.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Great. I think that's it, Summer.
All right.
Thank you.
Thanks, Summer.
Next up is IT. This is page 45 in the budget book. Under
All the,
We're at IT, which is also, it's in the book under central data processing, page 45.
So we're not calling this order anymore, because I called it civil services next.
Oh, I'm sorry, you're right. I skipped over one. Sorry. Jackie DeSico.
How are you?
hello. Page of civil service.
It is. It's not in civil.
Under personnel.
Oh.
34.
Here it is. It's 37.
Is it 37?
37.
When we go $17,000.
Yeah, there's a couple things that were going on there. I had requested an increase for my salary. It didn't go up as much as what I was requesting. And the employees in my office were going up as a result of the budget, the salary schedule.
Principal count clerk in there?
And Robin was going to be changed to a principal count clerk.
So in terms of then your salary going up, was that the product of any sort of personnel review? Have you had any personnel reviews?
I have not. I was requesting it based on the additional work that I do, serving as HR for the city. And comparing that to other agencies similar to our size that make considerably more. And I thought.
Do you have a sense of what that considerably more is?
I don't have that right in front of me. I know it had been on the Nikon website.
Okay. And then in your office, then the changes in salary there, were those based on any performance reviews, or do you have a sense of what they were based on?
Robin's was based on the amount of work that she keeps. It seems like every year more and more falls on her. She's now doing the work of what for long before I ever worked here, she's doing the work of two other people that were in the originally in the controller's office. And just the way she worked throughout COVID, she worked 100% remote, and she was accessible to all of our retirees, employees at any time. She still has people calling her cell phone because that's what she gave out for people to reach her. And she just does a very high level amount of work and detail-oriented work with spreadsheets. She tracks all the Affordable Care Act reporting. She handles all health insurance benefits, and she does all the coding for the health insurance as far as every employee, what budget line they get coded to.
And so then also with the smaller increase in salary that you asked for, does that keep you above the highest paid person in CSEA?
No, I'm actually below now.
Is that unusual?
No, I don't know if it's unusual, but not exactly where I want to be. I think I do a lot more work than some of the people that will be making more than me as a result of the salary changes.
Are you usually involved in contract negotiations with CSEA?
Yeah.
So were you involved in the recent negotiations that led to the proposed change?
No, I was not.
Oh, okay.
I wasn't aware of that, so.
Really?
No.
Okay. Okay. Let's see. I've got an icon here. Do you know when
I reached out to Newburgh, city of Newburgh, they have a similar set up as us, they have commission,
Mm-hmm.
and they have one person that does it. She came back with her salary, she was in the mid-80s,
Mid-80s.
yeah, and she didn't handle benefits, and only assisted the city manager with personnel issues.
Okay. And how long have you been working for the city in this capacity?
I've been with the city 15 years, I've been doing this, 11.
Okay.
And so the person that you reached out to in Newburgh and the salary that she was making, what was the length of employment? I'm looking for her to have that salary.
I think it's been around the same time as me.
And so you said that you're normally involved with the negotiations?
Yeah.
Normally you are.
We were actually been discussing going into negotiations, people working out an expired contract.
You sit in on negotiations.
Yeah.
With the CES, their union president.
Yeah,
How many
well,
other-
I sit in with John Dewey and the mayor.
How many other people are usually in that room?
For the city side, there's usually, I think, just John, myself, the attorney from Albany that does our negotiations, and Kevin Bryant, our corp counsel. And sometimes I think you get like, Kevin Gilfeather used to be in on them, and superintendent at DPW.
And the union president.
Well, the union president is for the union side, so the union side comes with their whole team,
Okay.
and then the city has their team.
So are you involved in the negotiations or are you just kind of sitting and witnessing what's going on?
I like to think I'm involved.
I
I mean, it's
mean, as
mostly
far
the
as
attorney doing it, but I do.
as far as recommendations, suggestions.
Yeah, I do a lot of
things that
research,
nature.
for titles, for salaries, for,
Yeah.
health insurance, costs of health insurance. Usually in the course of negotiations, something will come up about increasing health insurance contributions.
Mhm. Okay.
Hey, Jack, when we refer back, I put here the actual question. And in this department, you still are, is three using this department?
Yes,
Right. So I wasn't sure exactly what the question was before, but you are still the highest paid in that department.
yeah, in that department, yes.
Okay, all right. I wasn't sure, I couldn't hear what the question was before.
Oh, I think he asked if I was the highest paid amongst CSEA employees, and the answer to that would be no.
Well, that's with the changes in the CSEA salaries, though, right?
I was never, but there was always, the top two grades in the current CSEA salary schedule were higher than what I am.
Okay. Any other questions for Jackie?
Second question, I think Jack can answer the fiscal. Or the duties, that person, you said does affordable care and the health, and deal with the health insurance?
If he handles all health insurance, the billing, reconciling the bills, she figures out the budget lines, codes for every employee, as far as what gets charged, what. That's a lot of stuff that was always done in the comptroller's office, and it years back, got put on our office.
Thank you.
Anything else?
Okay.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank you, Jackie.
Have a good night.
All right, now, we're moving to IT, page 45. Patrick, so if you speak at all, you're going to turn around and speak to the big brother. Hello, Kyle. Good evening. How are you tonight? Good. Sorry, so many things to look at.
This part of the regular pay.
Looks like it's going down.
Okay,
Taking pay cuts?
the regular pay is down.
Nice, thanks, Kyle.
It's down to the budget to 2021.
So the salary for myself and Joel, two of the technicians, so myself and one technician, more of it's being put into sewer, 10% more. So 20% of my pay is in sewer, 20% of my pay, 20%, sorry, Joel's pay is also going to sewer.
All right.
For salaries, mine hasn't changed.
So your overall salary is the same?
I'm sorry, what's that?
Your overall salary is the same?
My salary has not changed.
So there's a little bit of a budget change, but your salary has not gone up at all?
Correct.
Okay.
It's just a portion of it going into sewer for more time being spent on it.
Okay.
It used to be 10%, it went to 20%.
And we see too, then, this big change with the service contracts.
Yep, couple of big changes there.
What's that about?
So I have a detailed budget, if anybody wants a copy. Okay, we're in the service contract, I'll put it over there. Yeah. Thank you.
You get enough?
That's 6 of them, wasn't it? Yeah, that's one.
Well, then how long have you been working for the city in this capacity?
I believe it's 13 years now.
All right, so the service.
Excuse me. So in the detailed budget, some of the things that were changing there, Area Archive is one of the bigger pieces that I've highlighted on there. That's an $8,500 addition. I mean, I have all it's all itemized on there, but I kind of highlighted what was changing. It's a lot of it's just year to year, so you can see. But the archiver is one of the big changes. We're adding 7 years of archival now to that service. The next item would be the Nova 4 fish testing training. That's $3,100. We had that previously before COVID. During this year's budget, we removed it to try to save whatever money we could. Those are those emails that I send out, text people and get put in mandatory training. Next one was next big change was Zoom. That was not in my current budget or my budget last year. So I've included it in the budget going forward. The next one, with the exception on the Zoom one, I did not currently include Zoom rooms. I wasn't sure when we were spinning that up. Obviously, it's live now and paying for it. That's $40 a month per room, but that's not included in what you see. The next item was Microsoft 365. We're currently using Exchange, an older version that we still have on premise here, that we're going to move into the Office 365 environment. That was the plan with that. We have Adobe All Apps, a couple different departments we're looking for access there. Mayor John has reduced it to one user after talking. That was about $1,000 there. The next big one, Managed Detection and Response Service. So that is an item that we've been looking at off and on for years for some time, but finding now is more critical infrastructure, which we are with the water department, wastewater, and other services here. It is something that getting an alarm at 2 a.m. is one thing, but having somebody else watch it, act on it, and already take action before that's happening is something that's really becoming a necessity in today's world with the ransomware and all the different attacks that have been happening. So I've looked at several different vendors just trying to get a baseline of where we would kind of fall for our business size.
That number in there is kind of a placeholder. I've had 5 different quotes now. That's in line. I've had some that are 4 or 5 times higher than that. And I've had some that are right around that. So that's just something I was looking at to try and get feedback that, that's something I would like to pursue. And, Mayor backed it. We're also going to try to offset some of those charges with the water department and wastewater when we finally firm up what we're going to use. Water department will contribute a portion and wastewater will contribute a portion also. But that's the evidence in there. And the last couple I had, there were mostly grants management related ones. I don't know much about them other than my budget because they affect multiple departments, and that's what usually falls in my budget. That's the stuff that's new. There's obviously some other things in there that have been there for some time. I don't know if you have any specific questions for any of the items or I got paperwork for them, I wasn't sure.
Well, we know it's getting more and more complicated.
Yes, it is.
What is bang the table?
What's that?
Bang the table?
That's one of the grants management websites, I believe. So I actually had the Age Kingston website and Bang the Table as 2 separate items, and I'm told that's actually the same item.
I see.
I'm not too familiar with it myself.
Okay.
So some of those items I noted that way because I'm not very familiar with it, but because multiple departments use them, it's not appropriate necessarily to cost it to one department. It would fall under the general IT, like where I have a centralized print line and things like that.
Now, Microsoft 365, $30,000?
Per user per month, yeah. That's not even including Office. Yeah. That's at, so we're just shy of 300 users.
And is that a big change from last year?
I'm sorry, what's that?
How much was that last year? Is that a change?
So it's actually, we have it on premise now. We bought it years ago as a capital expense, and we're hosting it in-house. So the updates and stuff from Microsoft are provided as part of what we purchased years ago and costed out. I don't know the exact numbers when we bought it, but it's expensive to buy that one also.
And what's is an option to move to a cloud-based?
What's that?
Is moving to a cloud-based mail system an option?
Yes, this would move it. So our current version is 2013. It's still supported for like another year and a few months. Trying to get ahead before just a few months. I had to switch. I was trying to switch next year, maybe not right in January, but that's the amount for the year. So the idea is you have to purchase something newer soon because Microsoft is end of lifing the current version that we're on in a year and a half.
Right.
But the latest version that they were offering is 2019. That also expires in 2025. So it did seem at some point we're going to push the production. So
you want to see what they come up with this year?
So yeah, so the better attempt, better money seemed to be trying to bite the ball and just get into it and around to cost out by the 2019 for just a few years.
And is cloud-based email cheaper? Like you expect the number to go down?
No, probably not.
Or go up?
The only thing it's doing is it would offset what we need physically in-house for servers here.
Right. Which is significant.
Yeah, it's security. It can offload some of the security here. It's got the authentication stuff, but we don't have to deal with the mouse thing so much. We don't have to deal with some of the other backups and stuff related to that so much. It's just reducing the infrastructure here, so that's what part of that cost is.
So our city websites could be hijacked now, right? We don't have a protection to prevent being hijacked, right?
Yeah, well, different levels of protection.
You do. Well, you said that the 24/7 monitoring and dealing with it is something you want to be looking at now.
So the managed detection response is to have like a network operations center. They're going to install a device here and start watching all of our traffic. When they see an anomaly, that would trigger them with an alarm for them to start looking at it before they would even alert us unless it's something actionable. The problem I'm having is it's just me and 2 other people. At 2 a.m., if my phones are blowing up alerts, usually it's 2, 3, 4 hours before somebody's actually sitting down and actually starting to look into it.
Right.
In today's world, that's too long. That's when all the damage could be done. It seems like these guys a lot of times now wait for a holiday weekend or something like that to do all the damage. But we have different levels of protection and everything. It's not to say, it's not nothing, but there's different levels. And this is something that really, I think it's really neat because we're critical infrastructure. We're not
So
just.
how much is that line item that you're proposing?
What's that?
How much is that line item that you're proposing?
That's the managed detection response is about $43,000.
What kind of damage, give an example of the damage you're talking about?
I mean, if you look at like Colonial Pipeline, they're locked out of all the computers and you have to build up a new network from scratch before you can even do, because you need to do forensics on that equipment.
Okay, thank you.
With all that, would you say that your workload has increased
My workload has substantially increased every year that I've been here.
And yet there's no increase in your salary as in other departments.
Not for this current.
Uh-huh. Have you had a performance review in the past 5 years?
The past 5 years, we did one a couple of years ago. I don't know if it was exactly within 5.
Okay.
3, 4 or something.
Kyle, under revenue, water department reimbursement, I see that one up pretty high. Now, is that based on actual time you put in or just a contract we've come up with?
Yep, so the 45,000 that water department reimburses, that's been our IT services agreement for 500 hours of our time. For anyone else, IT wise. The extra 10,000 is what we're thinking of getting back for the MDR service as part of their reimbursement contribution. That's not finalized, so it's just potential revenue of an extra 10,000, thinking that it's along the line of what we think they should reimburse if council is also supportive of feeling.
Okay. How'd you come up with those numbers?
Well, the 45,000 was an hour.
No, I mean the number of hours. How do you?
Well, based on
I mean,
time,
you sit
so
there-
we've been, they have a time and attendance system that we've been using for years. We actually clock into their system when we do work over there.
Oh, okay. All right. Okay.
It's $100 an hour. It was, initially, there's some stuff around for call.
Okay.
$100 per hour.
Yeah, and then there's some call and pay, depending if you get on call 3 hours, so it came out to 45,000.
So Kyle, this, the NDR, the $43,000,
Yep.
is that a one-time cost or is
No,
that
would
going to be?
annual. That's an
that's
annual.
annual?
Sounds like they're hijacking us.
Yeah. Well, there's all different costs. I mean, so if I reference Colonial Pipeline again, I mean, the guys that went in there was the one quote that I got that is about 4 or 5 times what you're seeing. The guys that responded. It's relevant to what level of service you want to, I guess that's the.
I understand.
I don't necessarily need that, I don't think, but something in the middle ground is what for water and sewer, I think, at this point, is something that we seriously invest in.
Okay.
It's also, when I do these, every year I do a bunch of insurance forms. It's become another box on the insurance form also. That's another item that, do you and who do you use for your managed response?
Right.
Do you have a retainer with them? What's the SLA? Is it 4 hours? Is it on site?
Sure.
Because they want to get an idea when they're quoting us, what our ability to get this fund back up.
And when you are woken up at 4 o'clock in the morning, do you get overtime for this?
I currently only get overtime if it's an emergency, a bona fide emergency. I don't think I'm an extra pay.
What would be deemed an emergency?
I mean, if it was like all hands on deck before a phone call are all coming in, I would probably, then submit for overtime. If Joel or the other guy are responding and they're just calling me over the phone, and I'm just going to answer and take some phone call, which frequently happens, I don't. It's just part of it.
And you end up working kind of irregular hours, people get,
I'm having a hard time hearing you, sorry.
you end up working fairly irregular hours sometimes because of emergency calls and things going wacko.
Sometimes, yeah. All depends on what's going on, but yeah. I'm here to back both of them up. They're primarily the first responders to any emergency now, but I'm still responding with them. So.
Great. Anything else for Kyle?
And not so much for do. And what is the promo days for these 2 networks or tests? 2021.
There is a salary schedule. Page 40, so page 46. I'm sorry, no.
Ask the salary for the support.
Oh,
Yes, 46.
they're both going to
46 is the salary schedule
next year's plan.
for the department.
What?
So the 2 technicians have certain steps, they're grade 17, that's what's being rearranged. Both of them are going to the same.
They are, there's a,
So I'm looking at 176, you told me about before.
right, well, for the
It's hard to
The
see.
difference here is one employee is split with the sewer department.
Sewer portion.
So if you go to page 170. Yeah, 170.
gets the standby time?
Hold on, we've got two conversations going at the same time. We can only have one. Patrick, please.
What?
We can only have one conversation going at a time for this thing.
I'm
So
sorry.
we got one going on back here.
Thank you, I'm sorry.
So Tony, your questions about how the salary is split between?
No, yeah, just trying to figure out total salary for these two, benefits and work that's in here.
Okay,
Because I know you said it's for the board.
It's $60,000 for each position.
I don't see
You have, on page 46, you have the frame.
Yeah.
60, then a case, 48.
Oh, you get
And then if you go,
$6,000.
right, you get 12,000 on the sewer fund.
Okay.
Tony, that's the sewer portion I was talking about. I think we-
Correct. Yeah. That total.
Yeah, they're both gonna be the same, well, tentatively the same pay next year, but the sewer portion is what.
yeah, right. So their total salaries both is 60,000.
Well, currently, no, the one guy just started, so they're, with the steps, he's currently on the lowest step, but that would tentatively change it next year.
Right, but it would go up to 60,000.
They would be both at 60,000 next year.
Yes. Okay. Anything else for time?
Yeah. Oh, you had that question about standby, I don't know.
Yeah.
When I ask it again so they can hear her.
I think you can answer.
Oh,
You did answer.
he asked, or when the two conversations were happening, he asked about standby pay. So the two technicians, Joel and the other guy, well, no, they go back and forth and split that. That's the that's part of the CCA contract for being on call. They're on call 24/7. I know some are weekends only or whatever, depending what department, but they're 24/7.
Okay. Great. Anything else for Kyle? We're all good?
Thank you very much, Al.
Thanks, Kyle. All right, so next is going to be housing, which is page 62. You let the lion in downstairs? Can you look into that?
What's that?
The lion downstairs? You didn't hear the roaring? Put that lion back to the zoo.
Here for housing.
I'm not sure if Kevin is joining via Zooms or. Refrigerator. Yeah. But I don't see anyone else.
Everybody showed it.
But I can go over it.
I'm not seeing any messages about.
Yep.
See, I can speak on it. I don't see anybody else up there from our team.
Like zooming in.
Yeah, I can't see the users. So, but we'll see. I'll get his done. I don't know if there's any other department heads joining remotely. But I don't see them up there either. So we'll just see how this goes.
Well, I'm concerned if they're trying the first email from Melissa. Because I had trouble, mine, puts them all into one email, so it wasn't clear to me that I was getting a second email with a new number. So if anybody is watching who's trying to dial in, oops. If anybody is trying to join us by Zoom, there we go.
Just let our IT guy go too. Should have kept an eye on
Yeah.
Emergency.
Well, Melissa almost called me.
Who are you looking for?
We were wondering if Kevin Corte was joining.
I do not see him on the screen.
Okay.
And I reposted the link to make sure that it was correct. It was correct. I don't know why you weren't able to get it, but in right now is Sue Cahill, Mandy, Ruth Ann, John Schultai, Kevin Bryant, Emily, and I can't.
Okay.
It's 9 people in there. How do you get that to actually show?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Well, we'll go on with housing then. All right. So we're going to have a change in personnel there, the housing. Is that related to the shift here in the amount of money for regular pay?
It's not. We had proposed 65,000 as the same salary for. We wrote this budget in August prior to knowing, Kevin was leaving us, but we had decided for next year that having one full-time person in the office would suffice. Previously, we had budgeted one full-time person and a part-time person. You'll see that we revised that in 2021 earlier this year, and we removed that. And so at this point for next year, we were just proposing one full-time person to manage the housing and some very minor contractual services related items. Most of the large variances are related to grant funding that came in this year for the department, both with our anti-displacement learning network and our LISP grant. So you'll see that that's the large differences in revenue. So that's the general concept for the budget.
So we're just looking at the director.
Yes, yeah.
And right now, we don't have a director of housing.
We still do. Kevin Corte is the director of housing. He'll be with us through mid-December. At this point.
So we're through with the LISC grant, we're through with the other grant. We'll probably be to a great extent through with at least the collecting of information with the Dover Pole project, right? So do we clearly need to have a director of housing initiatives going forward? What's the rationale?
Yeah, I think that for us, there are multiple reasons to keep a director of housing. One, that while we collected a lot of information for the zoning plan, there's still going to be a lot of, outreach that's going to have to happen next year, and education related to what we do there. We also are still actively moving forward with a couple of initiatives, even though some of the ADLN and the LIST grant funding is majority being spent this year. Some may be spent next year. We're doing a tiny home project, which will be going into next year in partnership with Family of Woodstock. We're going to be working on hopefully some additional tenant protection legislation at the council level, both related to good cause evictions as well as the concept of moving forward with ADUs as part of our zoning initiative. And I think in general, there's also a lot of housing work that we can do together with the city council related to the continued movement of foreclosed properties and creating partnerships with organizations like the Kingston City Land Bank and RUPCO to be able to make sure that we're disposing of these properties to get them back into beneficial use. And I think having a director of housing, with us working on all of those initiatives, I think will be very critical for kind of moving the housing agenda forward. Because if not, there's no city staff person that currently would work on any of those initiatives.
Good, thank you.
Yep.
Other questions?
Have you had any potential candidates for the replacement, or we just don't?
We did start advertising last week, but they're not due yet, and I haven't talked to civil service, but I don't think we've received any in yet.
Thank you.
Any other questions related to housing?
Yes, Steve, the funds from the private agency, is that coming to an end? I see it dropped off substantially. Is that going to come to an end?
Yeah, so that was mostly, you'll see mostly the LISC grant and the Anti-Displacement Learning Network grant. Those are, most of the funds will be spent. Each of those grants will have a little bit for next year. So you'll see the 20,000, so
Right.
basically 10,000 from each grant, kind of rolling into the first quarter, of next year. But majority of that funding will be contracted services and will hopefully be contracted by the end of the year. And if it doesn't, then we'll come back to the council for a budget transfer because it has no financial impact. We don't spend it, so that's, but it'll go toward a variety of RFPs that we have to put out related to legal services and other items that the Anti-Displacement Learning Network have identified or in the process of identifying at this point.
Was part of this the salary grants?
Yes, so some of the reimbursements that we'll get this year will have paid for all of Kevin's salary for this year, for 2021. And 20,000 would go toward the new person's salary for next year.
Next year.
Yeah, so you'll see that 20,000 is recommended for revenue in the budget. So that will basically reduce the cost. So if the total cost of the department for next year is 83,000, we're expecting 20,000 in revenue to come in, which would reduce the total cost of the city to down to 63 total.
Is there more grant money out there?
There's lots of grant money out there. And so, I think we're keeping our eyes open for, funds for housing initiatives. A lot of housing money is actually bricks and mortar building things, but there are some grants out there that support program type. And so we're continually looking out for those types of funds.
So to some degree, then we're looking at about $45,000 that this position will be adding to the budget. Since it was all grant funded previous year.
Yeah, I think year over year, that it will actually, cost the city less than it did. It'll cost the city less, I think, in 2022 than it did in 2021 overall to have the position.
Because?
Well, because the total department, according to the budget, cost, without the 275,000, going back to the 2021 budget. And now going forward in 2022, the total budget's only going to cost, the total expenses are 83 minus 20, which is 63. So 275 minus 190. It's a little bit less, I think, if I did the math right on that. You basically take the 2021, the 275 minus the 190,000 in grants. That leaves about 85,000 in expenses that the city actually bore in 2021. And then you take the 65,000 minus the 20, or the, 83,000 minus the 20 brings you down to 60. So in the end, it'll cost about 20,000 less.
And the exact number, if I can jump in, is 21,064. It's on those variant sheets I provide for the council.
Okay.
And there's a subtotal, which if it's a positive number, it's a positive variant from the prior year. If it's a negative number, it's a negative variant.
Right, but so, I mean, the issue is we can apply for grant money in the future. We can't guarantee that it's coming.
Right.
Okay, other questions relating to housing? All right, thank you for that. Next, to the mayor. Oh, you're here.
Yep.
Hey, can I
I'm sorry. I'm sorry, Arts. Can we switch?
Mayor, question about housing?
I'm arts too.
Yeah.
Oh, yes.
Oh, you're Arts, that's right.
Yes.
Can I ask you, I want a general question about housing. Last night we had a conversation about the notion of all of our fees, the building safety department, or anything related to new housing and new construction is just expensive. And, if we, what do you think of the notion of less fees to just attract more development, you think that, it's sort of a lost leader, as they say in business, to sort of change our reputation to not being so just going after every fee in the book, but being more friendly to the development community to say, hey, we're really lowering our permit fees because we really want to encourage development. Because if we get more development here, it's not only good for our citizens with more housing, but more economic activity, and we would benefit long-term, bigger picture. Does that philosophy have any merit to your mind?
I mean, I think one of the issues with that concept is that we have, a lot of homeowners that are on fixed incomes that, are kind of making ends meet. And I think what it would do is it would put a pressure on the residential tax base. If we had developers paying less fees, they would, in essence, we would be just shifting the burden from the developers to our residential and commercial building owners.
Short term, but long term, we're creating new tax revenue to the city because there'll be new structures to tax.
And I think it would have to be done kind of part of a long-term, like maybe a kind of a long-term study or discussion to really be able to kind of model that. And so how many, what type of developments would we see under that model? And would we get 10% more, 20% more? What would the impact on that be? And so for the small developments where, if Steve mentioned how many permits they've done, this year they've done an extraordinarily large amount of permits,
right?
But they've been relatively small. And so
right. So maybe
the dollar values are relatively minimal in terms of the amount.
Maybe if you just reduced them for projects that were, going to provide significant housing, reduce the fees for those people to encourage them to develop.
And I think that as part of the incentive discussion when we get to our zoning code, that's where I think we can play an important role in deciding, if we're going to incentivize certain types of development in our community, how can we do that? And what programs could we create that target, certain types of areas that we want to develop, either neighborhoods or also types of buildings in neighborhoods. And then those are kind of the carrot that you can provide. I think that would be a much better, use of kind of our targeted resources than kind of the blanket, we're going to reduce everybody's fees by 50%. So I agree with that.
Thanks.
Great. Okay, so arts. So this position, you're looking for someone to hire, right?
Yes.
Have you had trouble finding people? Is that why there's an increase in salary without an actual person there?
Sure. So this was, proposed, again, back in August, where this, Patty, I think is still here. But one of the, and I think that you asked this kind of question of Summer earlier, is where did I come up with that salary? And I think one of the things that I tried to look at is as part of our proposed salary schedule, is where do these, positions fit in with other, positions within city government? Many are in the CSEA. And so that 52,500, but generally the concept is that's the same pay that our sign maker at DPW would be proposed to make. That's the same pay that a HMEO who drives one of our trash trucks is proposed to make. It's the same as our purchasing agent and what they would be proposed to make. And so being able to have, say, a director of communications, who is a department head, who has a lot of responsibility for the city, the same thing with the director of arts and cultural affairs, a lot of responsibility, single employee, they basically have to do everything for the department. I felt like that 52.5 number, was a good, appropriate number. And is it the kind of the middle level of our range? I know earlier you asked, in terms of whether department heads, are paid more or less than members of CSEA. And this is one position where both arts and cultural affairs and, communications were paid less than a lot, or maybe some could say even more than half of our CSEA membership, but yet had a lot of responsibility to us, to the public, to the council, where other folks didn't have to kind of have their, to be out there on display and kind of called on the carpet when needed to, by the public. And so that's really where, when I think questions were raised earlier about kind of performance reviews, while we don't have a mandated performance review process for any employee, one for CSEA, something like that would be able to be used for disciplinary purposes. And so that generally is not found a lot in, union jobs. For management, it's definitely what I do on a bi-weekly basis. And so I meet with every department head. I have 20 plus, staff that I directly supervise, and I meet with them on a bi-weekly basis to evaluate their performance every other week. And some department heads I meet with weekly, just to be able to make sure that they are meeting the goals of my administration, meeting the goals that Economic Council has set, through legislative and the budget process. And I think that that is kind of the ultimate performance review, and that we kind of do not just once a year, once every couple of years. It's really just, every other week, me checking in with them directly to be able to see how they're doing and see if they're staying on track, and then being able to, use the budgetary process and, the kind of the raises that come with CSEA raises to be able to make sure that our department heads also kind of, get the same type of raises that our CSEA members get, which is something that, we can talk about when we get to, my office. But that's just where the 52.5, came from in the budget.
So is any of that review written down?
So we I did in 2019, I did self-evaluations.
I mean, the weekly reviews you just were talking about.
Oh, do I write down my notes about the departments? No, I don't. I wish I had time to do that, but no, we don't keep written notes about.
So the management handbook says that one of the approaches to using that the mayor will decide upon each employee's increase based upon his or her overall consideration of the following factors. And one of those is most recent annual evaluation conducted in July.
Yeah, but does it necessarily say that it's written? I don't believe. But, I, again, pride myself with how connected I am with my department heads and how, I believe, keep them working, toward kind of the common good of the city. And I think that the concept of being able to make sure that we keep our management pay in line with their peers is something that, we have struggled to do. Generally speaking, management, is no one is going to get rich working in public service. We try to pay them enough to retain them, so we don't lose them, and have them go into other public sector jobs in the area. But there's no way that we can compete with private interests. We just can't do it on our salary schedules. But we try to make sure that we at least are competitive with other government entities in the Ulster County area. But it's really hard to compare ourselves to folks who are outside of the Kingston Ulster County area when we start comparing, because everything is very different in terms of their responsibilities and duties and, for each individual job.
So if I get this right, man, you said that, so there's nowhere it says that they get a performance review. As was being brought up before, there's no set performance review documentation, things like that. You just been doing it bi-weekly, talking to your management, and glad something.
Yes, and so yes, and so what the CSEA, what the management handbook says for our managers is that they are what is kind of required in the handbook that you all approved is that when we negotiate and have an MOA with the CSEA, so if we decide as part of a contract negotiation that CSEA is going to get 3%, management is then required basically to get that same equivalent raise of 3%. You all with the management handbook also gave me the ability as part of the budget process to come back to you with between a 0 and 2.5%, I think we said, for a performance bump or a kind of a bonus if we felt as though they kind of outperformed in that year. And so far to date, we have just done the CSEA raises. And there are then certain management positions that needed to just be realigned to be able to keep up with, the changing climate and clientele in terms of the jobs. So, whether it's, you saw that Steve Knox requested a raise last night, and that's something that, we granted. That raise is way more than 3%. But in order for us to be able to, we looked at other, building department directors in the region and realized that I think his new salary is like 80,000 maybe, if I got that right, I don't remember from last night, but, that is, what we felt like was appropriate. And so you're going to see that, and you see that in this budget, certain positions that, I felt were getting out of line with, their peers or out of line with their own, staff here in city government. And then I think that there are many that you'll see not, weren't giving any raises, and that's because we haven't yet settled the CSEA contract. We haven't even, just to be clear, I know that there was questions with Jackie before, but it's my understanding that we've not started CSEA negotiations yet. Is that accurate, John? Because John leads the negotiations, but.
We've had no formal discussion for CSA at this point. And
so just to be clear, what I've proposed in my budget for salaries is just a discussion that I had with, CSA leadership to make sure that I was, going to get support by putting in higher values here, but I did not, and we have not yet had a CSEA negotiation to ratify these proposed raises. This is just
wasn't there some kind of negotiation with CSEA to come up with this change in the whole STEP program?
No, there's not been a negotiation yet. I proposed.
So you did this all by yourself?
I did. I proposed this concept to CSEA, and they agreed that they would get behind it and support this concept. But there's been no negotiations. That would happen after you approve the budget, which is how all of our CSEA processes go. We always come to you with an MOA. We always put the money in the budget, generally speaking, to be able to cover raises. And then when we have an actual official MOA written, we then bring it to you, and the council either says yes or no. And so that will still have to happen with this after the budget. If the budget gets adopted as I proposed, basically we're setting the money aside in the lines for the people. We would then have to go ahead and negotiate with CSEA the actual specifics. This grade turns to this grade, this step goes away, and and then come back to the council for that approval, which is the same thing we would have to do with management. I can propose these are all the positions that were not amended. Once we have that CSEA MOA and the council approves it, the next month I would have to come back to you with, hey, you gave CSEA a 3% raise. This is the list of 15 department heads that, also now need a 3% raise based on our handbook, which you guys would, and that's what you did in 2019 and early 2020 when we approved the last CSEA contract. We had to then come back to you the month after you did the MOA to be able to approve the management raises in accordance with that.
Steve, so what was the justification then for those ones that didn't get any raise in this proposed budget?
Yes.
So from your perspective, you look to see that their salary now is comparable to other salaries, or what went into that?
Yeah, so for the management employees that did not change, I felt like we were relatively consistent, with positions around this area for that type of job. Knowing that most likely they will be getting a 2 or 3% raise on top of this based on us being out of contract with CSCA in 2021, right? So we currently have gone a whole year without being in contract with CSCA. And so once we settle a contract with CSCA, most likely our department heads will see a bump. And so you can imagine what these, department head salaries are, and in your mind, you could add 2 to 3%, or depending on how it goes with CSCA, maybe even higher. And so you're going to have to add that on top of those. So someone like Kyle, who is just here, he's at 81,000, will most likely settle a CSCA contract with somewhere between that 2 and 4%, will then get added on top of that 81,000, which would bring them up to 85,000 or whatever. And that, is generally, and then next year, in 2022, another raise, and then a raise after that. And I think that keeps generally some of these positions that are, I think, more on track with kind of being competitive with their peers.
All right, so we base that on the compatibility that other municipalities that same job description, whatever. All right, and on top of that, they would be given longevity pay.
Yes, so our management gets,
years.
yes. Yep, our management gets longevity pay on a little bit higher scale than our CSCA employees, but they do get that as well.
But that all has to be negotiated.
Yes.
So will all CSCA members get a raise? Not management?
As proposed in this budget,
Right.
this would, as it gets, kind of settled, this would all get approved if you all allocate the funding for these positions. We would then go to CSCA and say, hey, look, we've got the money. We then need to negotiate the fine details of the positions to match the budget. And then we bring that back to the council for signature. And so it's for all CSCA employees. I've proposed a raise for all CSCA employees except for the one I'm related to.
But they're not getting the same rate.
They are all getting, generally speaking, at least a 2.85, 2.9% raise. So there's like a minimum raise, basically a 3% raise. Everyone's getting a minimum of 3% raise. And then because of the proposed change to the number, we currently have 18 grades. We're going to bring it down to 7. And so based on that, our lowest paid employees are kind of all lumped together. So basically, some are going to see a pretty good bump in their salary because of that. And then we eliminate, I'm proposing to eliminate.
And then some will only see a 2 point raise.
And those are generally people that are at the higher end of the pay grade, and that, kind of the highest end of our CSCA scale. And generally the people who have been here more than 6 years. So the folks who are seeing the biggest jump, they will see, because we're getting rid of the 6 steps that existed prior, and we're basically going to, not artificially pay people their, a low wage for the first 6 years. We're going to actually pay them what their wage will be for the rest of their life here. That creates, so for a brand new employee who just started in a low paying clerk's position, is going to see the starting salary go from 40 or 37,000 to 44,500, right? They're going to see an $8,000, $9,000 change in that new salary. But then people who are at $50,000 who have been here forever, they're going to see a 3% change, and then they're still going to get their longevity, which is going to be what separates them from some of these new employees. But when you take the 119 or 120 employees in CSCA and you sum all the changes up, the average change over the 120 employees is a $5,000 increase across on average for the 120 per employee for 120,000 for 120 employees.
So on average, so the upper end may be only getting like 4,000, and the bottom might be getting 6,000.
Depending on if they're brand new.
Because that's in that.
Yes. Yeah.
But everybody's getting something
Yes, in this proposal.
in this proposal,
I don't understand.
Everybody's getting a raise?
except management.
Except management,
Yeah,
okay.
which would come back to, we would come back to you once this gets negotiated and we then identify kind of what this equivalent, plan would look like for a management raise, which again would probably be in that 3 to 4% range for a management for the year of 2021. We then would still have to negotiate with CSEA for 2022, 2023, 2024, and then management.
Is there any, like, I was concerned there could be some kind of like stark difference, like, that shouts out like, wow, this person's getting an incredible raise, but you're saying it's more like a 5,000, it's more level than that.
Yeah.
Is there any employees that are getting like a real difference in their pay?
You're only.
Or is it about
Yes,
5,000?
you're only going to see it for new employees who just started in the last year. They're going to see, there's on the lower pay scale. So you're going to see, they're going to get 6 years of that step system all at once. And so you're going to see those are the employees, and there's probably maybe 10 out of that 120 that are in that $9,000 range.
So they're gonna get 9,000.
Yes, because they're the ones that just started and are going to skip all of those steps and then have a little bit higher starting salary. But
So the guy making $50,000 right now might only get like $2,500 or something like that.
Generally speaking, yes, but there's very few of those too. So there's very few of the high increasers and there's very few of the low increasers. Most of the people are going to be in that middle range where they're going to get that between 5,000 and 6,000 bump. And those are generally the lowest paid employees. And some of them, again, won't even see it because many of the positions that we're trying to improve in here are still vacant. So for instance, our HMEOs are going to be going from I think it's, in here, historically they were at 47.5 and they're now going to be going to 55. And so we're going to be able to have there's no one in any of those positions because we can't get anybody to fill them. And so now we're going to be able to go ahead and have, a much better chance of recruiting and retaining. And if you look at what Ulster County, pays their employees, we're still, I think, even with our plan, going to be paying at or just below what the county pays their employees to do similar jobs, even with all this, just to kind of keep that out there that we're still not.
But we have better benefits.
But we have a little bit better benefits, so that may help us kind of attract back, or at least attract some people to come work for us instead of working for some of the other, local government operations.
So those 10 employees at the top end that are getting the least amount of pay, have we thought about doing anything for them?
Well, for this plan, my plan in.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It just seems like a few people that may be feeling, like they're not getting fair shot.
Yeah, and I think that whenever, that'll be up to CSEA to advocate on their behalf during contract negotiations. This is really a retention and recruitment plan, and that's really how I build it. It's really, my goal of doing this was to not be able to really even have this considered negotiations. I'm doing this so that we're able to go ahead and make sure that we keep the employees that we have, and continue to be able to recruit new ones. I do think that during contract negotiations, would it be appropriate for the union to ask for better longevity for some of their more senior employees? I think that they should, and I think that, they're going to, and I think that that's okay. But I think for my perspective, this was not about worrying about, what the high-end, long-term employees were going to get out of this. This was really focused on being able to retain and recruit, this whole new, a generation of, civil service employees, knowing that, longevity steps still exist. And, if you've been here for 15 years or more, you currently get $1,350 extra as a one-time payment just for being here that long every year. And so, and then if you're here for 20 years, you get another 200 more than that. So it's like $1,550. If you're here for 20 plus years, it goes up until, you're up to $1,800, $2,300 a year extra, which is really, almost 4 paychecks, three and a half paychecks for some of these people worth of pay just in longevity. So there is that already exists for our long-term employees.
So how can we base this, though, on completely changing the structure of the pay system without negotiating the CSEA?
Well, and I think that that's the unique options that I have as the mayor is to be able to budget for what I think is appropriate for the city to be able to function and propose that. You guys have the ability to agree or disagree. But then, in order to negotiate a contract, we really need the money in hand. And we need to be able to have the money in place to be able to negotiate that contract. And if the money didn't exist, I would be, I think, negotiating in bad faith with the union to be able to do something like this, not knowing that the common council either said no to this concept or that the money wasn't available.
So all this has to be negotiated in the next contract, Steve?
No, all of this would need to be negotiated. So if you guys approve the budget on December 7th or whatever, we would need to work out the MOA before January 1st, generally speaking, to be able to, then get it to you guys at the January meeting to be able to approve. That's the general concept.
So if you could just clarify something for me, Mayor. This is like my eyes are glassing over with all of the talking that you've been explaining to us. So you came up with the proposed budget, all of the numbers without actually having spoken to the union representatives or anything like that.
Once I came up with this plan of shrinking, getting rid of all of the steps, because I think that that's we should pay people what they're worth on day one instead of waiting 6 years to pay them what they're worth. And then also taking the 18 grades and shrinking them to 7. I then sent that to the union president and said, this is, what I want to propose in the budget. How does this look to you? He back and said, he had a few minor tweaks that he thinks would make it better for the overall budget and for the system. And that was it. And so I then put it in the budget. I had John update the budget with all of the numbers and then pitched it to all of you and to the public in October.
That sounds like a negotiation.
Well, no, a negotiation is when you sit down and you actually have official negotiations. And so, what we did was we discussed this concept, we discussed this plan. Negotiations are, I'm going to give you this, and what am I going to get back in return for the city? And we haven't had those discussions, formally yet, because there are things that we would want to talk about with the union.
I believe you said to give it to the union president who has some suggestions for changes, and then you make the change.
Yeah, and that, again, is not a negotiation.
But they seem to be on board with your proposed
Yes.
budget.
Yeah.
They're on board with it. So what would the negotiations consist of then?
Nope, just writing it all down on paper, making sure that there are, there are questions that will arise. So is this in replace of a raise for 2021? I would assume it is, but we need to write that down. Is this in replace of getting any retro for 2021?
Well, how do you know the union's behind this? Was there a vote?
The CSEA leadership, is supportive of the concept.
And who in the leadership?
The executive board, I would assume.
Executive board?
I don't know their process. All I know is that, they have, they wrote letters, I believe, to public comment to you all for the budget. Did you guys get those?
Yeah,
Yeah.
Okay.
most of, and they were, I know,
Oh,
forget
the
who
one
came
from-
and spoke to
The one
us.
from Dan Quist now, yeah.
Yeah,
And then
they
Howard-
were, they were
Howard doesn't
on
know.
board with what you
You were-
proposed.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm saying that the labor relations specialist and I think the union president, I think publicly have come out in support of the concept.
They have, but I don't think the body of the workforce has come out one way or the other about it.
No, they usually don't until the end of the vote, Steve. They get the vote
But
at the end.
my understanding, the letter I got, it sounded like the union was supporting it.
It was it?
Well, that's just union leadership. Union members usually don't get to do anything except to vote at the
You
end.
don't have to vote on this. I mean, we could just say, as the mayor said, we could say no to this.
Yeah, but I'm just trying to figure out how to arrive
No,
at
it's not going up there. And then with the mayor, if we just said yes, and then we proposed this to the CSEA, I believe their membership, their rank and file could look at this and say, we don't want this.
But he's already said that.
Well, he's saying the
He already said that they are in agreement with the concept of the budget. So what's left to
I mean, I think he's saying from the one or two people he's talked to, and said, this is what I propose. I don't think the whole rank and file has seen this yet.
Yeah.
And said, I agree with it.
It doesn't work that way.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think the whole union, CSE union membership has seen this. They might have heard some parts about it, but they haven't seen it, so they could come back when they take their vote and say, no, we don't want this. Right? Is that?
And again, there's, the way I look at it is that, you know, we're doing, I think, what I've proposed, I think, is the kind of the making sure that we have the tools to be able to, I think, do the right thing, to be able to attract, you know, and retain our qualified workforce. And if in the end, you know, the CSCA decides they don't want to do that, then nothing changes. Like, they'll still get paid the same, then this money will, you know, not get spent, you know, so it doesn't, you know, we don't give it to them anyway. You know, there has to be, you know, that discussion and negotiation. And so if in the end, like, there needs to be an actual signed MOA, you know, that has to happen in order for us to be able to move forward with changing everyone's pay. For now, again, this is just proposed until we have an agreement. But I think I need the tools, though, you know, to be able to do that. And that's why I felt like it was so important to include it as part of the budget, because I think that there would be no way for me to, you know, build a budget and not, you know, put this money in here, and to be able to then have a worthwhile conversation about making such a drastic change. Because in the end, you know, this is a $700,000 commitment that the city of Kingston is making to its CSCA workforce. Largest commitment that we've ever made, you know, in a one-year process. But still, not the largest commitment we've ever made to any labor union, because just last month or a month and a half ago, you guys voted on a $2.5 million commitment to the fire department for a 5-year contract. And they only have 50 employees. So that's $500,000 a year over 5 years. This is 120 employees, and it's a $700,000 commitment, you know, for just 1 year. Even if we were to continue to do this type of raise over the next 5 years, that is, in essence, equivalent to the fire department. And so I just wanted to make that point, because I think that CSCA over the years has never gotten the same level of commitment by the city as the city has done toward other labor unions. And I think just using that math of the most recent fire department contract and, you know, what I'm proposing here, I just hope demonstrates that to you and to the public too, and to your constituents, that, you know, this is really just kind of, you know, having an even playing field with some of our other labor unions that CSCA just has not had a chance to, you know, get, just because they're usually the first union that is cut, the first union that, you know, has to make the financial sacrifices when the city has had some tough times. And I think now that the city is on better footing, you know, this is the opportunity for us to be able to actually engage and support the membership.
So if the goal is retention and control in the near term, I mean, retention and attraction, why not just have a series of percentage increases, so that the folks with the lower grades get, say, 6% increase, people with middle grades get 3%, whatever, people at the top get 2%, so that you're still using the same amount of money. You're not monkeying with all these other things. You're not creating these new differentials where people who've been here for 10 years are now making less than people who've been working here for 4 months. Why not have a more across the board kind of increase, and then use the actual negotiations with CSCA to try to reduce the number of steps and grades?
Well, I mean, I think we are going to have to, you know, have actual negotiations with CSCA to kind of, you know, put this in writing. But I think that the biggest and costliest thing for the city in terms of this proposal is to be able to raise the base pay of basically everyone that is, if you're familiar with our grade system, we have 1 through 18. Basically, the folks who are on grades 1 through 10 are going to be the ones that benefit the most from this proposal. There are lowest paid workers, there are laborers, there are cleaners, there are clerks, there are, you know, yeah, those are basically all the positions in that 1 through 10. And those are the ones that are going to really be able to, you know, benefit from this. And those types of, our employees are the ones that we're having a hard time attracting and retaining. And so a 3% increase for someone that's only making $37,000 is only going to bring them up to $38,000.
That's what I was saying, you'd have a higher increase for the folks who are in those levels, but you would do it across the board for all those folks, because right now, there's a huge disparity in what the actual changes are in people's relationships. So, it just seems like it throws out, the importance of seniority. So some people who've been here for a long time are experiencing kind of a shock because people who've been here for a very short period of time are now making as much or more than them. Then you've got the other question of getting rid of, it just seems way complicated when you could just say, okay, we've got $700,000. The people at the bottom, you give a higher percentage raise to precisely what you're talking about to increase their pay, but you also give, some increases to everybody up the line at a smaller rate so that the actual dollar income is not all that different.
And I think that's exactly what we did. I think that, right now the folks at the bottom are getting that 6%.
Because you're getting rid of all the grades.
But it does the same thing because the people at the top are getting that 2 to 3%, raise, and the people at the bottom are generally getting that, 6 to 10% raise. And I think that one of the things that after 6 years, your salary is the same as your colleague. And then the only thing that differentiates you after year 6 is your longevity. And so we have very few employees that are actually in between that 1 and year 6 timeframe. Each department, as you know, we don't have, large departments like everyone here in City Hall. There's not a lot of new 1 through 6 year employees. And once they hit that 6-year mark, they are the same as the person in the office that's been here for 25. And so it's just that 6 years where they're being paid that artificially low rate, that each year they then get a $1,500 increase to get to that regular pay. And that's where we're having the big issues of attracting people. And so I don't think that getting rid of that 6 years worth of, step increases will have that big of an impact on morale in that department. Because many employees that are here already that would be complaining have been here for 20 or 25. And so after you get to that 6-year mark, they're going to be the same as you. And I think that that's and then there's not a lot of turnover after that. And so really, yes, maybe this year may be painful for you to be sitting next to someone that's getting paid the same amount as you, but you're still getting that longevity. You're still more senior, so you may get more overtime. You may get more comp time because you're higher, you've got more longevity with the city, but I don't think that, the folks who are, from CSEA that may be coming to you that are upset about this, I do think that they are still getting a 3% raise. And yes, it may be different that, they may have wished that they had this larger salary when they first started 15 or 20 years ago. But times change. And I really think that, that's my approach here is that once we do this once, forever going forward, when we list a position on, our job board for $35,000 or whatever, that will be the actual salary that they're paid. It's not $35,000 this year, and then you have to wait a year to get to 36, and then wait another year to get to 37. I just don't think that that's how, going forward, we should be doing business to try to be able to, attract people. And that's just, and maybe we just disagree on that, but I just don't think that
that's fine. I've got no problem with that. I just think that's the sort of thing that needs to happen within negotiation, contract negotiation, not through a budget process.
But we need the money to be able to do that.
Well, we can set aside the money.
But I think we need to set aside the money in people's salary lines because it could be set aside to be spent on a lot of other things.
But we can go ahead and do that. We don't have to do it through this complicated mechanism.
But we don't have a salary line in the budget that we can put money in. We only have contingency, which could then be used for anything and not guaranteed to be able to go in the future towards someone's salary.
We've traditionally put money in contingency, knowing that there's going to be a contract negotiation too. So.
But sometimes we don't settle the contracts and the contracts take years to do. And, the budget process is every year. And, I felt like this was the best way to do it. But again, I mean, in the end, I proposed my budget. This is what I'm proposing. You guys are going to decide to do what you want.
I don't think anybody here is against increasing the salaries, increasing the wages, the income of the people at the bottom of CSEA. I think that's a really laudatory goal. I'm just concerned that the way that it's being proposed to us here is overly complicated and creates too many disparities. And there would be a simpler way to do that so that, it would be seen as much more equal and equivalent and be much better for morale across the board.
Again, I have not heard of morale issues because of this proposal. Maybe you guys have, but I've only heard of one or two that have been concerned that they may not be getting as much as their colleague. But generally speaking, I think people feel like, this is the first time the city is actually, stepping up to be able to help, raise their wages, substantially. So I don't know, maybe we're just not hearing from the same people.
And literally, you're saying, Steve, that the people who are really being affected at the upper end of the step, seventh step, are the ones being affected. And you're saying there's only about 10 of those people, is that correct?
Yeah, if you look at John's office, and he can send it to you. I mean, or actually, I can send it to you. We actually have a literal breakdown of every single employee by name and by position, and how much that person is getting the change. You have to. Some of them also get paid from the sewer fund. So if it only looks like it's 1,500 on this sheet, you have to go to the other tab, and it will show another 1,500 for paid out of the sewer fund. But you could see for yourself that these people are there's some pretty there's very few that are in that 2,000 to or the 3,000 to 4,000 range. Most people are making more than 4,000. Part of this, almost 90% or more are making more.
So there's a sheet out there that we can.
Yeah, it's in your budget already, but it's just John has one that it's not like a page in your budget, but all of that same information is in your budget. But John has it broken down, and I have it broken down. We have the positions, and by name, by title. And we don't have the vacant positions that we added to the budget, but we have the current existing positions.
And it says what their increase would be based on the proposal.
Yes. Yeah. So happy to send that out to everybody. If you want to focus on individual people.
If you could send me a whole list, we would appreciate it.
Now, Rennie said that there's some employees that work here longer at similar positions and they're going to be paid less. Is that true?
No, not less. No one's going
Yeah,
down.
they're not going to be paid less, they'll be paid less than somebody who's more
Less
recently
than
hired.
somebody.
Yes, so for the first 6 years currently, that if you and I have the same position in the office. I've been here 7 years. I'm paid $50,000. When you get hired on year one, even though we're doing the same exact job, and you could have come from someplace farther away, but more qualified, more experienced, still the same job. You get paid $45,000 on year one. 46,000 on year two, 47,000 year three, 48,000 year four, 49,000 year five, and then on year six, you and I finally make the same amount of money. And that's just the way that the city structure has worked forever. And I just philosophically, and I think the union agrees that generally speaking, that's not a good concept, because to be able to attract you to do a job at that low salary, when it's really in essence, that job is worth the 50,000, but yet I'm only hiring you at 45.
That wasn't my question, Steve.
Okay, I missed it then.
Yeah, my question was, Randy said that there's some employees that have been here in a similar job less time, but with your idea here, they could be propelled above an employee that's been here more time. Is that true? Right?
That's what I've heard.
No, so if you are currently, if you're a year one employee, making 45,000, and I'm a year three employee making 48,000, in this new budget, we both go to 50. I skip my last three, you skip 5, but we still both get to 50.
Lucky.
And that Well, yeah, and
But there's
that's
nobody,
regardless.
nobody that's being affected in a way that the person year one's getting less than,
No.
or more than.
Right, yeah.
Right, but that's regardless of how long the person has been there. You know, I could be here 25 years, you're coming in, and at year 6, you're making the same thing that I'm making, even though I've been here 20 years longer than you.
But you have the longevity.
It's a yearly payment.
No, I understand what it is, right? Yeah,
It's a yearly payment that you get.
No, I understand, it's
So,
1,000 or 2,000.
Yeah, so it's still not the same. I know you keep saying it, but it's not the same. It's not the same.
No, I understand, it's not the same as $5,000 difference in a paycheck. Yeah.
That
in
you
the
get each paycheck,
What?
that you get in each paycheck, your salary.
No, I understand.
Yeah.
I mean, but that's not happening.
No, everybody's going up.
Everybody's going,
Everybody's going up.
but some people are just going up to the same level.
Faster.
Everybody's going up.
Fast.
Yes, and everybody's going at the same level.
And that's because we want to attract people and that's the way we did it. Okay, thank you.
What's it like for departments when they have these vacancies and the workload on the rest of the department?
Yeah, I mean, it's super stressful. I mean, I think that you'll hear from planning at some point. They're on tonight, but we've had a historic preservation administrator position that's been now open. It's a part-time position, so they're hard to fill in general. But at the current salary that it was in the budget, we couldn't get anyone to work. We haven't been able to fill that position. We have 5 HMEO positions at DPW that are empty right now, which means that's 5 less plow trucks out there this winter at this point. We've got, it's hard to be able to get, some of our clerk positions to stay. They may work here for a year and then the next job comes along that pays a couple $1,000s more and they're gone. And so we spend a whole year of training and then they walk out the door. And that just is unfortunately happening time and time again. So I think it puts a lot of stress on our department heads, which is, why they're stressed because they're having to pick up a lot of the work of their, what would normally be done by an employee of theirs. And it just really ruins morale when people are getting dumped on with more work, more projects, and feel like they're being not paid enough. And I think that that's one of the issues that, we've had, and why we wanted to just basically increase everybody's pay is that there's just a feeling of, the job market is hot. There's lots of opportunities out there, and anything that we can do now to be able to kind of bolster the feeling of being able to, be compensated while working for the city within means, I think is a good thing. But people are stressed. Morale is low at this point in time.
So we move on to arts.
We just did that.
That was ours.
That was arts?
That was ours. That was ours.
The art of budget.
Actually, I have one question back to the arts thing. I see we had $57,000 in grants under revenue. That's zero. Is that because we haven't applied for any grant? What was that grant? Are we anticipating any grant revenue for that position?
So, yeah, so with arts and culture, in 2021, we received 57,500.
Right.
In the new year, we're proposing to be able to bring in, is it 103?
103,000.
Yeah.
That based on what we've applied for?
Yes.
Or we're just kind of looking at things?
No, so this is.
We've actually applied for those?
Yeah, so this has been an ongoing grant with the Novo Foundation. Novo? Yeah, and they funded us the last 3 years for this department. And we have 2 grants with them now. One to be able to do the Arts and Cultural Master Plan. And so there's funding from that we've rolled over. And then there's a capacity grant specifically for 2022 that we are applying for to be able to fund that. So, we expect this department to be, I think this one's one of the ones where we're cost neutral, I think.
And so the increase in salary for the Director of Arts and Cultural Affairs, that's covered by the grant?
Yes. Yeah.
But the benefits are paid for by the city or by the grant?
Nope, this department, I believe the way the finances work on this one is that the whole department is fully grant funded, including the benefits.
So this is one of the $9,000 raises, right, Steve?
Yes. Yep, and that one was really just to bring this position in line with, other positions that have some responsibility in CSEA, but even this is still from a department head level position. This is still will be our lowest paid.
How long has it been vacant now, Steve?
I think Addie left in October. I believe we are doing interviews.
So she's not considered management?
Yes.
She is?
Yes. Yep, this is one of my 22 plus department heads that directly report to me. Yeah, so that happened, that 9,000 was just based on, that was arbitrary. This is me just proposing to bring that 43,000.
Oh, okay.
This is not related
proposing
to.
to bring a department head's job from 43 to 52
Yes.
to attract people to that position. Okay.
Man, how many grants do we have with Nova right now?
We currently have, so Arts and Cultural Affairs technically has 2 within the department. We have grant funding also for the Department of Health and Wellness. So that would be basically 2 departments.
So that's 3, so that would be 3.
Yeah. In total, it's just a couple of thousand.
I missed it. Do we have anybody applying?
Oh, yeah, I think we received about 20 applications. And so we're doing interviews in December.
Nice.
Or late November, early December, I think.
Is there anything else on arts? All right, then, let's move on to the mayor's office. That's page 19.
What page?
19, 19.
There's no very proposal here to figure salaries of increase by $20,000.
Sorry, Tammy, I couldn't hear you, but salary increase for me? Yes, so $10,000, which would be putting us back on the 2019 plan of getting the salary for the position of mayor to 100,000 by 2024. So we skipped the 2021 because when we were writing this budget last August, we all had no idea how bad COVID was going to get. And so we postponed that raise. And so I am asking for both the 2021 and then the new salary for 2022. So that would bring it to 930.
Was that the $5,000 increase you all talked about?
Yeah.
And I know you talked to me about the chief of staff, so you talked to anybody else. Could you explain that person's duties?
Sure. Earlier today, just for folks to be able to look at later on, I shared what civil service had worked on back in 2020 for the chief of staff. And so it's a job description that hopefully will kind of enlighten everyone. But the general concept is that, we will have this person really have a twofold. The first is, and most important at this moment, is to be able to help implement the $17 million American Rescue Plan project. As you know, we're getting $17.3 million in order to be able to get that funding out the door to all the variety of uses. We really need to have someone specifically managing just that project. And so I'm proposing that half of that person's time would be spent managing the ARPA funds. In our budget, there's actually a total of, I believe, 4 different positions, including that one where we are proposing to use ARPA funds to basically develop an initial ARPA team to be able to implement. You may have heard recently that the county developed a team to distribute their $34 million. They're hiring 3 full-time staff to be able to implement their funding, which is, about half the size of ours. So I'm proposing at this moment a half-time position in my office with the chief of staff. I believe we're proposing a half-time in the Office of Grants Management to help fund the grant manager position. There's also funding going toward a project manager in the engineering office. And then it's some additional funding to pay for, I think it was John, wasn't it the senior clerk or some sort of clerk position that we put some of the ARPA money toward? It's in the back on page 177. Trying to find the federal funds.
I have documented.
But generally, yes, 4 positions to be able to implement the ARPA funding. And so that's one big piece of this person's job is to be able to manage ARPA, get that, it's a 5-year commitment for us to be able to do that. We have to spend the funds by the end of 2026. We have to have them all allocated by the end of 2024. And we need to basically have the first half obligated by the end of, or by the summer of next year to be able to get the second half. And so we have a pretty quick turnaround time. And so we definitely need some support to do that. But then we also have another whole part of the chief of staff's role, which is really to be able to help work with me on some of the really important projects that we're doing here in the city, everything from some of our joint legislative initiatives that we work on a given time with the Common Council, helping to work with our constituent services to be able to make sure that we're responding in all of the different ways that we can to be able to assist our citizens. We also want to be able to provide additional guidance and support to all of our department heads. As I mentioned before, we have so many wonderful staff. We have so many amazing capital projects. I think you'll hear when we get to grants, we're currently managing over $40 million in capital projects in all of our different departments. And so being able to provide the support necessary from the mayor's office level, I think is really critical, and having that partner in us to be able to do that will help us get more done, especially as our constituents are looking at even more demand on our services and on all of you, on what you can provide too. I think that this person will also be able to be a resource for all of us. And so it goes into a little bit more detail. I encourage you to have a look at that. It's in your email box.
I'm presuming, based on what you're saying, that there are no provisions within this plan to fund anyone to oversee the operation, right?
Yes, and so that's the benefit of the federal funding, the $17 million, is that we can use that funding to be able to pay for staff to manage the money. And so we included in the proposed budget, and I don't know what the total was, John, it was like 150,000 total of ARPA federal funds total for, to basically out of that 17 million, we took 150,000-ish. And that's going to help fund city staff time with these new positions to be able to make sure that we get that money managed appropriately. It's all federal funds, so we have to be really careful with how we manage it and where it goes to, and being able to follow with all of the groups that we give.
Come up with this title, chief of staff. Why didn't you just say grant manager?
Yeah, so there was a lot of back and forth with civil service. Being able to provide a position in the mayor's office that, in other communities, they call them, administrators, city administrators, they call them deputy mayors. Everyone has I think when we talked about it 2 years ago, I called it director of intergovernmental operations or intergovernmental affairs, I think we called it when I pitched it to you. But this is what, when Jackie and her civil service commission, when they looked at what the duties of this person would do, this is where they classified this position. It also would be, a non-civil service position. So we would apply for it to be exempt. So it would basically be an appointed position, to serve as, at the pleasure of the mayor, depending on what mayor is here in the future.
So where does this $17 million appear in our?
It does not.
Does not.
So the revenue for what we need to implement it appears here, but the 17 million actually would go and is, you know, John can explain where it is, but it's basically in like a reserve account, right, John? Where is the 17 million? Well, we currently only have.
Well, it's in a bank account, I mean,
It's just not in.
it's not in the only part of money that's in the budget is in the grants department, and it's 168,000 and change as revenue. So essentially, as we spend the money, we recognize it as revenue. So it's not, you can't recognize it as revenue when you receive it. You recognize it as you spend it, and that's how you earn that revenue. So as you have ARPA eligible expenses, you recognize the revenue.
So Steve, you're saying that this 17 million will pay for this position for the next 5 years?
I'm proposing to pay for half of this, yes.
Half of it
For the next
5 years, and then the other half will be in the grants department?
No, that's in the city budget. So we're proposing that basically, you know, the city budget, the city would pay half of the person's salary and the grant.
So it'll be 40,000 for the city plus benefits and 40,000 for the grant.
Yeah, and that's in. Yes.
80,000 seems a little, maybe a little more than needs to be to find a good person.
Yeah, so looking at salaries, I looked at, you know, where, you know, the county is, you know, as you know, the county executive's office has the county executive, they have deputy county executives, 2 of those. They also have 2 assistant deputy county executives. All of them make more than 80,000. But the county also just hired their director of, you know, the federal funds, and that person's being paid around 96,000. Their deputy is paid at 75, 80, and their, you know, support staff is paid at the 50s. And so I felt like both from a local level, that's relatively reasonable. And then I also, and I sent you all this today, we looked at, you know, what kind of chief of staff operations and deputy mayors kind of got paid. You know, the closest, you know, there's a variety of places where they go. There's 77,000, there's 112,000, there's 70,000, there's 87,000, there's 96,000.
These are different municipalities?
Yes, yeah, and so those are all different cities in New York State. And so I provided you guys a breakdown of the 33 cities that took the NICOM survey that kind of listed these types of admin positions, so that you guys could see how, you know, when we did our research both back in 2022 and now, kind of what we thought it would take to be able to, you know, bring on kind of a high level, you know, someone who understands, you know, general government. And I think it also aligns well with some of our other salaries for our own internal department heads in terms of where everyone fits, you know, in terms of how many staff they're managing. And, you know, we generally range for kind of our larger department heads are anywhere from, you know, obviously police at 125 to fire at 113 to DPW at 100 and change, corporation counsel at 100, you know, and then you go down from there. And so I felt like, you know, being in that 80 range was, you know, probably appropriate for this position.
This person will be reporting to you.
This person will be reporting to me.
He or she won't have any market down, that's reporting to him.
Right. And so the way that basically I would task them with assisting me and, you know, following up with all of our staff to kind of meet all of their goals, their performance objectives. You know, when we do our annual action plans every year, you know, we create goals, and for every department head, we publish those. If you haven't seen our annual reports that we put up for each department on our website, I ask each department for what they plan to do in the following year. And then, you know, over the course of the year, that's what we use to be able to see how we're doing. They're going to be helping us make sure that we're meeting all of those metrics, especially with, you know, again, with me being pulled a million different directions. This is just going to help us with the added support to do an even better job at that going forward. But yes, they're in the end, I'm still responsible for, you know, all of the department heads, you know, per the charter. But this person will definitely be helpful in assisting all of the departments with their ongoing activities.
So just to clarify, so that the department heads, they will be reporting to the chief of staff or no?
According to, I'm still their boss, but this person will be assisting me in making sure that we're meeting all of our objectives and goals, in the departments.
Now, I mean, this sounds like a lot of responsibility. Again, I'm presuming a position like this is going to need a clerk or a secretary or something.
And so I have one in my office already. And so I already have my, confidential secretary.
Right.
So
he's going to serve.
Yeah, so
both?
all the three of us would be, kind of the admin for, city government, overall management of city government. And I also included that in the NICOM salary to be able to total up the total amount spent on admin. This does not include any of the secretarial staff for any of these cities. This is just the mayor and the whatever kind of administrator that they have to help. And so, Kingston is on the relatively low end of how much we spend on admin for the amount of employees that we have and the amount of projects and the size of our budget. And so I think that this will bring us back up to, being similar to cities like Beacon and Auburn and Corning and Rome and Ithaca. They're all of our same size sister cities, but we are still underfunded in terms of admin support.
Okay. I see you have a raise for your, for Roy.
Yes.
Now, is that based on additional duties that you're figuring he may be taking on with this new position? Or are you just putting in that?
Yeah,
regardless?
I think we've been over the last 6 years, 7 years since I've been here, we've raised that position from 30,000 to what it is now at 43. And with the proposed, CSEA pay scale, I wanted to make sure that Roy was kept the same as our other clerks in the building and in city government. And so that 47.5 is the same that we'd be paying our other clerks. And so I felt like he should at least be on the same playing field.
He's not a CSC.
He's not, no, he's an appointed, position. And so I wanted to just make sure that we were able to keep him at that same level as everybody else.
So when they all move up to level 1, he'll move up to.
If there's management raises in the future, beyond this year, right, then he would get management raises, but so he doesn't get steps or anything.
No, so you're just raising him so that he's on the same level as all the other.
Right.
And in the future, he will get the management raise probably.
And he's been here, what, 3 years?
2 years, 2.5 years. I think it'll be 3 in 2.
Where's this person that's the chief of staff, where are they gonna be located at? Is that even been thought out?
No, I mean, my sense is that I think that they'd probably be located in a desk in my conference room. At a desk in my conference room.
So if the main purpose is to administer the funds, why not do this as a contract with somebody so that it's clear that this is a finite position?
Well, I think that, one, I think that only half of this person's time would be spent on ARPA. And I think that this ARPA program is complex and the city has a lot of risk, especially if we decide to provide this money to outside groups, outside of city projects. So if we decide to make grants or contracts with outside agencies to deliver services, we need to make sure that that program and those funds are being spent appropriately. And to contract out that work outside of our city system, I think also puts us further at risk because one, they may not know our procurement system and are then not in the end held accountable for their decision making in managing those funds. And I think we want to be able to make sure that we are managing this at the highest level of city government because of how many eyes are going to be on how we spend this. And that's why I think it's important that this funding and the management of this funding is, between my office and the comptroller's office, with some support from other agencies, but we need to be able to make sure that this is managed excellent. And I think that that's for me, the best way to do that is to be able to have, my chief of staff be able to manage that program.
Why not hire an extra person in the grants department and run it?
Well, and again, I think that, even for our current staffing, we do need some coordination with the grants department, but I think that this is even going to be more work than our grants department can manage. Even if we hired a brand new staff, and we are adding new staff to the department in this proposed budget, this is even on top of that. And so I think that there's enough projects already because we've been chronically underfunded in that department. And, as you know, we've asked for additional resources to manage grants before. We're asking again this year to be able to help manage projects across many departments. So as you go through Parks and Recreation, Engineering Department, you're going to see project managers in their budgets in this proposal. But again, that's all just to manage our current projects, not even to consider, managing this. And again, I will say that this is still only 50% of their time. I mean, the other 50% is really needed based on the amount of work that we are doing for our constituents and city government. I still need additional support staff to be able to get everything done that the city wants us to get done. And so outside of ARPA. And so even if ARPA didn't exist, I would still be asking for this position, for my office, just like I did back in 2020.
All right, anything else related to the mayor's office?
Done a lot on paper clips.
Yep. That it for the mayor's office. Okay.
All right, thank you, everybody.
Yep. All right, then we're moving now to community development. Page 58. I believe that Andy's joining us by Zoom, is that right? There we go.
Hi.
Like magic. All right. You have to have an extra cup of coffee.
Can you hear us?
Yes, I can.
$58. Let me let you know, after this, we'll take a 5-minute break. After we're done with community development.
Services. Can you hear me?
I don't think you can hear you up on the side. Tony's asking about the changes in contracted services. Hold on.
I'm sorry, I kind of heard that. You're asking about contracted services?
Yeah.
Down a lot.
What would you like to know?
Well, it's gone down
60,000 to 10.
What it down to 10,000.
So we are required by HUD to have a 5-year consolidated plan done every 5 years. And we're also required to have a language access plan that should have been done but was not done. And the thought process was to try to put both of them together and put them out for an RFP. So knowing that those need to be done in 2022, I had put into the budget the request for 60,000. It was suggested to me that I come back to you in 2022 and ask for it to come out of the fund balance instead.
And what would be the reasoning for that? For requesting another fund balance as opposed to?
Maybe John.
I don't know. It was just suggested to me that that's how I handle it.
But by whom?
The mayor.
The mayor suggested that?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, so Mandy, so the $60,000 you requested.
Yeah.
That's to satisfy some HUD requirements, right?
Yes.
So if we do not get this accomplished, are there repercussions, penalties? What happens?
So the 5-year consolidated plan is actually a 5-year plan that is developed to explain what the priorities are for the city as far as housing, homelessness, community development, economic development. And part of the 5-year plan, the first year of our annual action plan needs to be written and is part of that. And it's required every 5 years that we have that. And we have to have that in place before we can submit. That's actually part of our application to HUD for additional CDBG funding. So without having the 5-year plan written, we can't ask HUD to consider us for funding.
Okay, so you're looking for $60,000 to carry out this plan. Now, I mean, I'm sure you can talk more about it than I can. I'm sure it's a very complicated procedure, which is probably why you want to contract it. You probably don't have the staff or the time to do this, right?
No.
That's the reason for this?
Yes, and I certainly don't have the ability to write a language access plan. Everything that we have has to be written in Spanish. So all of our documentation has to be Spanish. Our website has to be Spanish. And I mean, I speak minimal. There's no way that I could write a language access plan. So we have to put that out.
Right? That's not even the writing of the whole plan. That's just to put it into Spanish is going to be a considerable amount of work, right?
Right, and that's a different plan. The hope is that we could put them both together and put them out for one RFP, but there's no guarantee.
Right.
Is the language access plan required by HUD or the state? By HUD, okay.
Required by HUD.
And it's just one language?
They've really only said that it had to be written in Spanish. I have not seen where any other grantee has done it in multiple languages. But I think because Spanish is more prevalent, that's why that would be the chosen language as opposed to German or Latin.
Yeah, and like the state at the state level, they have language access in 10 different languages.
Oh. That's a lot.
So we're getting lucky.
So John, do you have a rationale then for why to put this, put your $60,000 and have it in contingency rather than just go ahead and put it in the budget here?
I think, well, once again, mayor's decision, I think he wanted to wait until he had a defined number to see what the numbers ended up being, and based upon the timing and have funds available in contingency that could be withdrawn from at that time. But once again, it's council's decision. Council can put it into the community development budget, or it can,
So
the mayor requested it, have it come from contingency when the time comes. But that was the mayor. The mayor preferred not to fund it within the department, and once we had a solid number, that money could be withdrawn from contingency at that time.
So Mandy, it's Rita Worthington. Oh, you can see
correct number.
Yeah, I can see you.
Well,
Can I ask her?
Go ahead, Rita, go first.
As the director of community development, is there a preference that you have, or it doesn't matter to you where the money comes from, or where it's put, or where it's taken from? Do you prefer it to be in your budget?
I prefer to not have to come to council later and be put on the hot seat about why I'm asking for money that I didn't ask for previously.
Okay. Hey, you're on the hot seat now.
So, I mean, I guess my point is, like, I'm being honest about what I need it for. I don't want to come back. This is my first time doing the budget also, and I don't want to, come back to you next September and say, I need this money for the consultant, and then you have me say, or you ask me why I didn't put in for this during the 2022 budget process.
Okay.
We'll be asking those questions.
I'm sure, but
So John, one more time, you're saying the reason probably is because we don't have a finite number and we might as well grab it up later, right?
The mayor's preference was to put in contingency because we didn't have, my understanding, because we didn't have a defined number. Mandy's on record for requesting that, to have that put in the budget. What's not known at this point is what that amount is. If the council decides to put that money in a budget, it's in that department's budget. It's not gonna come back out unless, so if you put in 60 and it ends up being 40, there's 20 in there that is there, right? You've allocated to that department. It can be used for other things, or, transfers can be done within that department. But the funding is there, so Mandy wouldn't have to come back. On the flip side, if you keep it in contingency, when Mandy does the RFPs and you find out how much it is, the request can be made for a more specific amount of money, and it could be it could end up being more than what Mandy requested, or it could be less. Mandy, you might be able to weigh in more on how defined that number is, but you can transfer out a more specific number. Once again, I mean, most departments in general would rather have this funding within their own departmental budget. They don't have to go back to council and ask for it. But there are times where, the mayor's gonna make a decision for certain items where there's a little uncertainty with dollar amounts, that you may prefer keeping it contingency, and then the council can make the decision, moving it back out.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you, John.
Sure.
Okay. Mandy, I have one other question for you. Looking at your salary, this has been a big topic tonight. I see you're not in for any salary increase, correct?
No. Correct.
Was that were you given any reason for no salary increase?
no,
All right. Have you looked into, is your salary comparable, lower on average with any surrounding?
they range from 65 to 141. It depends on the amount of years that they've been in the position. I'm also the executive director for the Kingston Local Development Corporation, and I've been in that position since 2013.
Okay. You haven't been evaluated or anything like that? That's
No.
not a basis for this? Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions? Community development, Mandy?
Looking at the CDBG reimbursement, it's down like $26,000. Not anticipating getting a lot of CDBG money.
I'm sorry, I can't really hear you.
CBG reimbursement is down from 171 to 145.
Because the housing program was cut this year. So we used to have $250,000. And then it was cut to $100,000. Because of the programming, a lot of that had to do with when we did the substantial amendment. There was so much money from previous years that had to be reallocated because we were late on timeliness. It was the mayor's preference, and it was passed by council to change the housing program.
Okay. How's our timeliness now?
Right now, we have we've done a lot of hard work, and we have gone from, on many levels, the bottom fourth to the top fourth with HUD.
Great.
We are currently okay with our timeliness. However, by the time May comes around, if we do not spend the money that we have now, we will again be in an issue of not making timeliness. After 4 years of not making it, we were able to get ahead. And I would like to see that we stay ahead.
How do you need help with that?
I need people who have been allocated their money to be able to spend it. So when they don't make their timeliness and spend their money before the end of the fiscal year, that means that that money is sitting in the HUD treasury. And
So
we
are we able to manage them, Simone?
I'm sorry?
Are we not managing them?
We try. I mean, we can't, I'm going to say threaten them per se. We say to them, you have to follow these guidelines. I'm going to say that when I took over in November, we were behind on 4 of our plans. So we were behind on 2019 capers, 2020 action plan. We did a substantial amendment. So I managed to do 4 plans between January and June to get us back into compliance with HUD. And then I just did the capers.
Well, thank you for that.
So because those 2 plans were definitely late, people couldn't get their money. So even though HUD had said originally that we were awarded the funding, without having the plan in place and their approval, money can't be spent. So now that we have their approval, and we got that in July, everybody's been notified that they are able to spend their money, and we need them to spend it as quickly as they can. We are in the process of starting the 2022 fiscal year CDBG application. So we need for people to spend their money, because if we expect to get more money from HUD, it's only going to put us over the top again, and we can't be there.
Okay, so if we were picking better candidates who are more fiscally responsible candidates, that might solve your problem. So at the very beginning, when people apply for these programs, if we were more stringent about who gets the money, and for them to prove to us that they're a fiscally responsible organization, I think that's where we're falling down.
This year's application has a few additional requirements of people. They need to be forthcoming as to whether or not they've had previous CDBG funding. They need to be forthcoming about whether or not they've been able to spend all of their money. And all of this is documented for the committee and the council to see in writing from them. If nobody specifically asks us if somebody has spent their money, you have no way of knowing that. This way, they need to be forthcoming to explain it to everybody.
And we do, having been through this process. I know. That is, part of the process is to see if people are spending the money, that are reapplying for more money.
No, I know.
And we're kind of hesitant to give that.
But maybe if we cut it off, if we get ahead of it, Steve, like being a little more stringent or a little more careful who we give our CBG money to, and make sure they're people who will actually be fiscally responsible and do what the right thing, then we wouldn't be in this situation every 4 years.
Well, that may be, but I think that's easier said than done.
Oh, I know.
Like Andy said.
I'm just saying.
And I know they're after these people all the time, and they can't go to their house and make them do it.
I know. But maybe we have to say you have to prove some kind of fiscal responsibility history, like your Central Hudson bill or something. I don't know what it would be, but maybe we can talk to John about that. What could they do to prove to us that they're able to do this project and get it done on time?
All right,
Yeah, I think that's a conversation
I know, for another place.
for
yeah.
CDBG
I know.
meetings.
It is. Sorry,
Yeah.
you know how I like to go.
So,
No, you, come on.
all right, any other questions from Andy? Any other questions related to community development?
Thank you for all your hard work, Andy.
Yes.
Yes, thank you very much.
Thank you for getting us back in
It's a really-
compliance.
Thanks, Mandy.
Thank you.
All right, okay. So after we take a 5-minute break, we'll come back for health, wellness, which is page 53 in the budget book. 5 minutes sharp, please.
Our health and wellness
Yes.
is not good right now.
We're
Not
already,
good, right? Not good for our health.
we're already a quarter of the way through our agenda.
Oh, man.
Stretch. Yeah. If you weren't gonna take a 5-minute break, I was contemplating encouraging you all to take both these.
Did you bring us yoga mats?
No, I was gonna encourage you all to stand up, yes, healthy eating habits.
Probably meeting hours.
Yeah, my-
Short.
my-
Maybe you meeting short, that's.
Watch me say,
Right?
You all have too many questions. That's
No,
what
I
it
got
is.
too much.
Too many questions.
my watch keeps saying,
But when
stand
the
up and
mayor's
breathe.
here, when the mayor's here, I don't think you're talking.
That was-
Yeah, I know, you got
You
it.
know, you gotta answer.
That was stressful. Right here. Yeah. Yeah, I got a headache.
So. Yeah, that's right.
I literally got a headache. I got it. Yeah, I just like so around in circles.
Explain it away.
There's no.
That changed.
So,
Randy, when's the pizza coming?
pizza coming, I got it coming up at 5 a.m.
I'll be out at knocking on the door.
See.
We're back in
I
session.
think that was more than 5 minutes, sir, respectfully. Yeah,
What can I say?
yeah, you said sharp.
You didn't hear the gong? I played twice.
You'd be sick after that.
All right. So we're now looking at the health and wellness budget. Welcome, Emily Flynn.
Did y'all down there, I passed out a detailed budget to help explain it?
You got it?
Yeah.
Is there something you want to draw our attention to in particular?
I do sort of want to introduce, I'm having some big changes in my budget, so would you guys like me to just kind of go over the new grants that have come in my department and kind of explain it, orient you a little?
Yes, because since this is like grants oriented, we'd like to be really aware of what's going on.
Okay. I'm gonna start at the beginning. So I'm the Director of Health and Wellness for the City of Kingston. I was hired to coordinate the Live Well Kingston Commission, which is a health commission for the City of Kingston.
Did it exist before you?
It's just barely. So the Live Well Kingston used to be at Queen Cooperative Extension. It became a city commission. And then the city got a grant to hire a part-time manager, and that was myself. So my position has grown quite a bit.
Was that Mayor Noble that turned it from Cornell into a city?
I think it was a collaborative. So Live Well was it was a coalition, and now it's a commission. So I think it was a group.
Okay.
The reason they brought it to the city, my understanding is to have more sustainability and to really be able to do health for the whole city. So just wanted to start around because anyone doesn't know. Since that time, specifically in the last year, we've gotten a very large State Department of Health grant. This has come before you, but I'll just give you the details. It's a 5-year grant for $1.5 million for physical activity and nutrition in the community. We're hiring a full-time position to manage that grant, which will be in my department. So that's a very big change.
Yeah.
In addition, we've gotten double the funding from the Novo Foundation for my Live Well Kingston support and development of all that health work.
Oh, okay.
So very big changes. I'm going from a department 1 to a department 2.
Yeah.
That's why you'll see such dramatic changes in my
Yeah.
budget. Would someone pass me these to So I could go deeper, or do you have questions? Or would you like me to-
So you're looking for 2 project managers?
That's correct. And do you want me to explain how they're funded by the?
Yes.
Yep. So the director is me, the project manager 1, that is the state, it's almost fully funded by the State Department of Health. It's that creating healthy schools and communities grants manager. That's the project manager number 1. In our contract with the state, we put in the position is going to be paid $46,100. We very likely can do a budget amendment with the state to bring it up to the 55, which is what the mayor is proposing for that position. But I didn't want to count on that in my budget at this time. So currently, the state is going to be reimbursing us for the 46,100. But I hope to be reimbursed for more, but we have to go through a budget amendment for that. So let me explain that in detail. The second project manager, that's for continued Live Well Kingston health support, which I can go into detail of what work they would do if you'd like me to go there next.
Yeah.
Okay, go into that. So I currently coordinate the whole commission, and we have 6 focus teams that all look at health in a different way. I'll try to go through them all. You can quiz me if I get it wrong. Age well, eat well, heal well, grow well, play well, and travel well. And it's sort of looking at health in different places. Each group comes together and works at connecting people with resources and access to preventative health in those 6 different categories.
How many residents do these programs touch?
How many residents? All of our residents. So travel well, looks at our streetscapes.
Can you give some examples?
Sure. So also within this, I can mention that I'm the project manager for the pedestrian and bicycle master plan. That planning document that we got a grant from the state DEC for should improve the quality of life for every single resident. It's in it. I hope increase access to sidewalks, increase access to active transportation in our city.
So that's one example.
Active transportation, does that mean walking and riding?
Active transportation is walking and bicycle.
Okay.
It does not typically include scooter, so the scooters would be last mile transportation, but it's not as active.
Okay.
So that project manager, so I, as I was sort of trying to get at, my position has grown quite a bit. So I was coordinating this health commission. Now I've gone on to managing a full department with staff, a large state department of health grant, and a bike and pedestrian master plan grant. So my responsibilities have grown quite a bit. The second position will help facilitate those focus teams. And then there's some specific goals that I'd like to do in the next year, such as our latest focus team is Grow Well, which is trying to support urban agriculture in the city of Kingston. The Rondout garden down there, the Barman Park Garden need a little love. For example, we need someone to help facilitate volunteers. I think there are people in our community who would love nothing more than to support that, but they need to be managed and organized and invited to that space.
To grow, to garden, just to make vegetables or just to make pretty?
It's a vegetable garden.
Vegetable.
But it could be, there could be beds of, there, I believe that there was a bed of flowers on the Rondout garden.
Okay.
Yeah. I have a lot more, I could go on about.
Are you involved in the garden in South Pine Street?
Am I familiar with it?
No, you're involved with it.
I believe that is a Kingston Land Trust owned piece of
Okay.
property that they lease out. You'd have to talk to the Kingston Land Trust.
Right, so you're not involved.
I'm familiar with it.
Right.
And Grow Well tries to pull in all of those people doing that work together so that we can collaborate that work. So we bring Cindy from the GW Garden, we bring representatives from the African Roots Garden. We try to bring them all together in Grow Well to share resources and to increase the amount of work we can do.
And is Cornell still involved?
Cornell Cooperative
Yeah,
Extension,
yeah,
absolutely.
very much, yeah.
Katie Sheehan Lopez is the chair for Eat Well Kingston. She works at Cornell Cooperative Extension. Linda Herzog is the chair of Live Well Kingston. This state state grant, we will be subcontracting with Cornell Cooperative Extension to do the strategies in the schools. Let me step back a little bit. So that state DOH grant is for physical activity and nutrition in sort of 3 key places. The community, that part will stay in my department. So physical activity will be some pedestrian and active transportation support in the city. Nutrition will be food service guidelines at different food places. So we're hoping to partner with the hospital, their cafeteria, People's Place, maybe put in a healthy vending machine. At the Deep Stadium concessions, can we encourage healthy food options there? That's food service guidelines in the community. Physical activity and nutrition, the 2 other locations are schools and early child care centers. Subcontracting with Cornell Cooperative Extension to do that in the schools, because they already do that work in the schools. And the family room stuff because they have the child care. So it's a big grant, but 1/3 of it, or not financially, but kind of 1/3 of the work is staying in my department.
Now, do you contract with some of the early childhood, the private early childhood centers that maybe is contracted through DSS?
So I don't know, I'm not an expert in that part of the grant, and that's part of the reason why we're subcontracting now. So Family Group Woodstock really knows all the details of that. That's why there are some subcontractee.
Okay.
Yeah, the Child Care Council works with all of those.
Okay.
It's part of the reason we get the grant from the DOH and Novo that this is a City of Kingston program. Is that part of the reason we get this one?
I think we were competitive for the State Department of Health grant because of Live Well Kingston. I think, so maybe it's time to also say my position is very unusual. And I think it looked unique to the state that our city was progressive enough to be looking at health in this way already. And then we had the coalition building that we already had in place.
So most cities don't have this.
I don't know of a city like ours that has it. I think it's important work. If I can, I don't like to say it, I don't like to tell my own horn, but during the COVID shutdown,
I was able to drop all of the work that I did and support our residents with food support. The Kingston Emergency Food Collaborative came out. I hope you're all familiar with it. We are still delivering food and groceries today because their need is so high. I was able to do that and support, and I don't think other communities have that resource. This is an exceptional thing that we have here.
Great, thank you.
You sound so excited about your job. I love it.
I do love my job.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you for recognizing that.
Yeah.
Any questions?
So your pay, your project manager 1 and 2 are totally funded by grant.
Mostly. So the city will be picking up some of the fringe. And so if you look at the bottom line, the gap between my revenue expenses is around $80,000. So that's mostly benefits and fringe for the positions. Like I said, the salary for that DOH, I think that we will be able to get reimbursed further, but I don't want to count on that at this time.
You're the director, you get paid $2,000 more.
I'm sorry, what's that?
You're getting paid $2,000 more than the project manager. Is that correct?
That is the plan, yes.
It is money from grant,
All but $80,000.
all but $80,000.
That's correct. So it's, the total is, what's my total? It's $546,000, and the city is only paying $80,000. For all that good work.
And so the city is paying, though, even if you're able to bring up that one salary to 55,000, the city is still paying for all of the benefits for the 3 positions or just the 2 project manager positions?
So yes, so if you look at my kind of breakdown, if you look down the Novo line, the project manager 2, Novo will be paying $27,000 of their hospital and medical. So it's not completely the city paying for it. Yeah, does that answer your question?
So but the city would be paying for all the fringe benefits of the other position?
I'm sorry, and let me clarify further. So then if you look down my DOH line, the state DOH will be paying the numbers in that column. And anything that's not allocated in those right 3 columns, the city will be paying for. So, you know, for project manager 1, the state DOH is paying $2,583,000 for Social Security, and the difference of that $4,207, the city will be paying.
What was your total revenue and expenses last year? Compared to the 81.
It was 0. So my department has been fully granted for the last.
So this is an increase of $81,000 compared to last year.
Correct.
How long will the Department of Health grant be for?
5 years.
5 years.
Novo funding is for 3 years.
What is this money coming from? Nova, what?
What are the
New York
two?
State,
New York State, Nova.
Yes.
Nova. Yeah.
And Novo has been consistent in with their funding.
This is the second or third time that we've received funding for this department.
And you anticipate more, for next year as well?
So this current grant cycle is for 3 years.
Okay.
So we're guaranteed 3 years for Novo. We're at $150,000 a year.
And I might not have been in here, I apologize. I just walked in late. What are these contracted expenses, contracted service, in general materials and supplies, the whole cost, that's sustained? Wow.
Yeah. Tony, did you get my detailed sheet?
Yes.
Okay, great. Okay, so in contracted services, if you see the first line is the state DOH, that is part of the contract for the creating healthy communities in schools. So the $199,000 is part of that project. The $5,000 contracted expenses is for my department, which is similar that I've had in previous years.
Okay.
And the last one is almost, doesn't even really show up. It's zeros out. We've got $60,000. We got $60,000 from the state DEC for the pedestrian bicycle master plan, but we have a $60,000 match, so it breaks out to be zero.
Okay.
Any other questions? All right, thank you.
Good stuff, thank you.
Next, we go to planning, which is page 72. Thank you.
It's nice and warm.
All right, anything you want to bring to our attention?
What page?
72.
72.
So Sue, you're not slated to get a raise.
No.
Have you ever had an annual performance review?
No.
No, okay.
So how long have you been with the city?
38 years.
How many? 38?
38 years. Wow.
What a glutton for punishment, huh?
Wow.
What was your first job?
Administrative assistant in the planning department.
Oh, so you've been in the planning department for 38 years?
Wow.
You built this city, so.
At least that department. Yeah. So are you asking for anything? What do you?
I did not. I was not aware of the process or the salary discussions at the time of submission of budget. Otherwise, I
You would have asked, yeah.
You're not looking for any more staff?
I had requested that the part-time historic preservation administrator be moved from a part-time to a full-time position. That was not put in the budget.
Is that the one we can't find?
Cannot find somebody to do it part-time.
Are they flexible hours?
No, they have to be 5 days a week, 3.5 hours a day by CSA rule.
For part-time, yeah,
There's
for
your problem.
part-time, right.
You got too many strict restrictions on the job. You can't.
What's the part? What is it? So,
How long were they here?
no, what is it? It's going up at $5,000.
You gotta be here 3 hours a day, 5 days a week? 15 hours?
3.5 hours a day,
You're kidding
5
me.
days a week.
That's not.
Right, that's a part-time position.
And so to keep a part-time, an actual part-time position, that's what the language is?
That CSA rule, yes.
Yeah, okay.
Is that something that can be changed with the next contract or?
In the next contract, yes.
Oh, it's our own contract?
It's CSA, it's our contract.
That can't answer to.
John, is there a reason for that? Is we have to pay extra,
I didn't hear it.
why does a part-time employee, why can't they work like 8 hours one day and then 8 hours another day, instead of 3 hours per week?
3 hours every day, 5 days a week.
Right, it's all part of the contract. I mean, that gets into other considerations, but certainly, the council had something they wanted to add in, bring it to us. I mean, there's different issues that it brings into, like, for an example, what do you do with holidays? I mean, it gets a little complicated. Like, what do you do if you're a Tuesday through Friday person, what happens when there's a holiday on Monday? You don't get paid. Do you get paid? Right? So part-timers have set schedules as of right now. They're supposed to have set schedules. They're limited to working half of the normal schedule. 35-hour employee works 17 and a half hours. Between 17 and a half hours and 25 hours, they get paid straight time. Anything over 25, they get paid overtime. Rules are pretty complicated, and you also get into considerations of the Affordable Care Act with part-time employees. So there's definitely some complications with it, but.
All right, thank you.
Sure.
Tony, do you have a question?
Yeah. Am I ready to go?
Hey, Tony has a question.
The consultants for line 411
Yes,
revised budget to 510,000.
that is the Dover Cole, the zoning consultants that are rewriting the code.
Okay. We're not gonna have that in 2022.
Well, the
We're not.
contract, yeah.
What's he saying no?
Correct. One-time payment. We don't pay them every year that much.
Right, it's the one-time contract, so that contract is signed, so the monies will be carried forward as needed.
Thank you.
What's developer reimbursement? What's developer reimbursement under revenue?
The developer reimbursement is when we are reviewing projects, we have the ability to hire consultants and the developer pays for that consultant, so.
Hey, John, side note, did the part-time employees get a raise too? Are they gonna get a bump?
In this, part-timer salaries are all based on a percentage of full-time salary. So whenever full-time goes up, part-time goes up.
All right, thank you.
It's just, Patrick, it would depend on, if it's a normal half-time employee, then they would normally just get half of whatever their full-time salary is. The difference is they're just not getting the medical benefits.
Okay, thank you. So if this increase goes through from $42,000 to $50,000, these people will get
A proportionate.
a proportionary increase in their pay too. Thank you.
Anything else? Are we that tired?
Yes.
Well, Sue was easy here, so she did.
Sue's good. 40 years with the city can't do.
Yeah.
Do you have questions on any of the other budgets that I administer? Landmarks, heritage, trees, historian?
The trees, that money comes from where? The grants, we get grants for that, right?
We are accepting applications now. I believe we've sent them around to all of you on the council. If you have people, please get them to submit them to our office.
We do for planting.
Planting.
Have you gotten any?
We've received some, but not to the extent that we are hoping. So we are going out tomorrow, actually in the field, going to be hitting certain areas that, based on our inventory, show that there are deficient, locations in concentrated areas. So try and blanket those areas tomorrow.
Do you think we'll get any more grant money for taking trees down?
We can apply again for the next round. We applied for the inventory first, then based on that inventory, we applied to take down, and then we applied to plant. So I would like to do a combination, maybe take down prune, because I think there's a lot of pruning needed to save trees versus taking them down.
So, since we're talking about grants for taking down trees, so if there is a tree that needs to be taken down, the homeowner can't pay for it to have it cut down or something like that. So the grant would provide for that. Could they apply for that, or is that still
Right,
on them?
Only if it's in the street, right? So
yeah, if it's in the city, right, within the public right of way, if
Yeah.
it's considered a city street tree.
so it's out in
So
front of your
if it's,
house.
so if it's yours though, then no.
No, we don't have any.
If it's 10 feet back, forget it. They're not gonna do it.
Okay.
Yeah, only if it's by the sidewalk, in the median.
If it's within the public right of way, it could be on the inside of the sidewalk and be in the public
Right.
right of way.
Yeah. Okay.
We talk about trees now. This-
Yeah.
Contract services, why is it going up?
Contract
Basically, contract service on the shade tree, 473, line item 473. For substantial and, this for the fighting trees.
What's that? Oh,
Where's that from? We're paying.
Where's that?
76, she's got the shade trees.
That is the grant,
Well, need expenses.
that's the
contract
city's
services.
grant that we have.
Say, it's a
It's a grant.
contract services, funding expenses.
The grant will be for the purchase and the installation of the trees.
$50,000 in grant. Tony is on the line down
Yeah.
in the revenue, the New York State grant.
For the contract services, this, wow.
$50,000 in grant revenue is paying towards 67.5 of the expenses.
And that's the purpose of trees. Okay, thank you. No one before. And where is it? This town, we're just saying, it's the homeowner's responsibility for the multiple, right? For the tree.
Yes, it
It's
is.
the homeowner's responsibility to don't purchase the new tree, correct?
It's the homeowner's responsibility to maintain the trees that are there. If they want to plant a tree, they have to get permission from the commission first. They have to get permission before they take down a tree or prune a tree as well.
So these contracted services, trees, this is this.
That is the grant that we obtained through New York State to plant. We're looking at about 70 to 80 street trees going in throughout. It's a citywide grant.
Okay.
And those that you plant would then become the
Responsibility, which
of
is
the.
why we want the property owners to submit the application. They, in that application, they commit to
Okay.
taking care.
That's important.
All right, thanks, Sue.
Okay,
Thank you.
have a good evening, everybody.
Thanks, Sue.
Have an evening. Now the assessor. That's page 29. Page 29 in the budget book.
Actually, I'm not. Work class, and I came back 2 days later and left it.
Thank you.
All the line items.
Thank you for making it easy for us.
Thank you, sir. Look at this guy, man. Wow, nice.
The page,
It's page 29.
You know what it's about.
What page are you?
29.
Things. I think primarily budget has stayed the same, not a large or expansive budget. Some of the lines that are not payroll. Consultants and some data processing support. I think probably the main item here is moving, the mayor has proposed moving part-time to a full-time starting in July. I'm a data collector. I did propose in my budget proposal going from a part-time to 2 full-time. I would just bring your attention to, prior to the pandemic, I did have a full-time data collector in my office. And also want to point out to you that since I've come here to the city, building permits have exponentially grown as of late. Also, 2018, it was just around 800 in the building department. They would transfer up to us for us to collect data on. And just this year alone, until now, there's 1,600. So it's doubled. Plus all, physical improvements that are happening in sales that we're reviewing that are unpermitted. It's really important that I have the appropriate staff to review those physical increases. Because physical increases on the assessment roll result in lower tax burden for the rest of the documents. And I know that and I think it's a very good thing, the building department staff has grown, commensurate with the amount of volume that they're taking care of and they're able to duties, and not just building permits, but their permits have grown. And we have to review all those permits. So, and my staff has shrunk. So just want to bring that to the attention of this council. I think, I had a prior full-time employee and the pandemic time hit, and that did get switched to part-time. Still part-time right now. I think we'll have that, but it's starting to come to a head in the office, and we need to. It's not going to be fixed in this budget. This time, I'll definitely be coming back to you sometime in the near future for even more staff, because we have to be able to have enough staff in the office to, fulfill our statutory duties and get all that physical inventory in time. That's the main.
Can you describe the data collection?
Sure. So it can happen in a few different ways, but the primary way that data collection will happen is it's generated from a building permit. Someone does an addition, builds a garage, or does a renovation, or does a change of use of the property from maybe it's going from a single family home to some type of mixed use, or it's going from mixed use to single family. So what happens is we'll go out, pull those plans. Right now, just the building department doesn't have the capacity right now to scan all those plans in, so we have to physically head down to the building department, pull those plans. We can't get them online. Go out, do some sort of inspection when possible. Lots of times we don't do a physical interior inspection, but maybe interview some building department staff and say, hey, what happened in there? What's it look like now? Go in, make those adjustments to our hard copy file and our electronic file, and then it's passed on to me. So if I'm doing that part myself, it goes on back to me and says, okay, with this adjustment in the physical alteration of the property, does it bring, subtract any assessed value? And then have to go back in and make a comparable new market value. So we're doing that many, many, many times over, and it's a lot of work to be able to do that. And it's, starting to be at a point where we definitely need some additional assistance to be able to keep up with
So, sorry, what is the solution to make that data collector a full-time position, is that what you're saying, or?
So, yeah, for 2020, excuse me, 2020 budget was a full-time position. Okay. And then it was lowered to, part-time. And so we're part-time this year. And the mayor has proposed in his budget to put that position back to full-time starting July. Starting the busy season is going to be coming up here. It will be a little bit difficult to try to train someone now. That being said, any help I could get would be greatly appreciated. And I think the plan right now is to start that person in July. My recommendation in my budget was 2 full-times, starting in January. And it's a start, but I do think the council and the mayor have to remember that the more we keep adding down to the building department, they're pumping out more permits, and there's less people in the back end trying to fulfill those permits completely. Once the city is not done with those permits, once the building department's done, passed on to my office, and process for the city to have an equitable, fair assessment.
So the new position here, then that's just.
This is what I passed out was my budget recommendation that I submitted.
Okay.
And then also on page 29 is
Okay.
And so you look at the positions, I don't see this in here. Like I see the number of positions.
It's not, it's on the page that he passed out.
Oh.
So what I passed out was what I had recommended. Right, every department head will submit a proposal, and then the mayor makes a recommendation.
So Dan, you're also looking for another full-time position?
Correct, yes, yeah.
But you'll be happy if you get you're gonna get the part-time to go to full-time right now, and then if you can get another part-time person then.
I'm looking for another full-time.
That's your, okay.
Yeah. Also in this proposal, obviously, it's kind of hard to make head and tails of because of the position is coming in. Year, the mayor also did make a pay adjustment to that data collector position, which I do strongly support. I've had not necessarily problems in the past, but it's just going to be really hard to find someone to come and work full time and with a good skill set for $38,000. Is a valuation, real estate, or assessment person with that type of training. So his proposal was to bring that up into the $50,000 range. And right now, I do have someone part-time that we do have an assistance from another department that I share a little bit with. And that's my part-time person, and they're of that skill level of that step grade, and it's working out quite well. That skill set is something that I need to see in my office. So I do support that. Whatever mechanism this council, the mayor decide on how to make that happen, whether it be in this budget or some other negotiation, I do strongly support that this position, this data collector position, be recategorized into a grade that is of higher power.
But that would be for the new position as well, right?
Yes.
And what about vehicles?
Right now we have the shared city hall vehicle. I can definitely see, if I were to have one, right now, I think that vehicle is enough. We're gonna have to have two. We have to highly coordinate, use our feet a lot, or request another vehicle, or somehow share some of the vehicle. And, that historically, that vehicle right out there has come from my office. It was once a Durango that I shared, and then the assessor's vehicle became a shared city home. So.
What's your feeling about those motor scooters?
You won't find me. At least not in the city of Kingston.
Well, after we get the bicycle master plan.
Yeah, maybe some bicycles. So that's what I have for you. I know it's a lot to swallow. Happy to discuss it now or anytime in the future. If you have any thoughts now. But I do think it's important to be able to collect that data appropriately because it impacts your constituents. It impacts fair and equitable assessments, and quite frankly, it affects the tax rate.
These consultants here on 441411, is that lawyer or are they lawyers?
Yeah, primarily attorney and appraisal consultant. Some mass valuation consultants also do some trending analysis, some work on the system.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else for Dan?
So Dan, you don't see you need another full-time position in this department?
Correct, Tony. Yep. I really think I should have 2 data collectors. I don't repeat myself, but just to be able to keep up with the massive changes in real estate that are happening right now in the city of Kingston. The market is exploding, exponential amount more sales. And inventory, we have to collect off those sales, not just building permits. So yes.
Makes sense.
Thank you very much.
All right, thank you, sir.
Thanks, Dan.
We now move to grants.
Dan? What? Dan?
Yes.
What was the mayor's rationale for not putting it?
Well, I think he did, it was in consultation with the mayor, we had talked, he saw my 2 positions that I did recommend, and it did go from that part-time for last year to full-time this year. We did talk about it. You have a busy season coming up, and he thought maybe, that's would be hard for me to kind of get all that data on and train someone at the same time. But, that was the thought process.
Thank you, Dan. Thank you, Max. Thank you for midday oil.
Yeah, thank you so much. I appreciate that.
Yeah, and you emailed it to us.
Yeah, I did email it, since I emailed it, I made a couple more corrections. So
Oh,
it's
okay.
considered this still a draft form, and then more will.
Great, so for the budget book, we're on page 60. So how are you finding the new position?
Well, very full. There's a lot of work to be done, and I'm still, we haven't yet filled my former position, so there's quite a lot of work on my plate, but it's under control. It's just a lot of balls in the air, a lot of details to keep track of.
And are you getting candidates? Like, who's doing the recruiting for the new position?
Jackie and Civil Service advertised the job, and we have received resumes, we're interviewing now.
Okay,
So, in the coming weeks, we expect to have.
okay, good.
New hire in place.
Oh, good. So before Kristen left, I know she sort of put a pause on actively going for a lot of new grants because there's so many you got to manage and you can't really, don't have the bandwidth to take on more. That's still.
That is accurate. You'll notice in the budget, there is a part-time position in the comptroller's office that will be, it's a full-time position, but will be part-time dedicated to grants management.
And I think with that addition, it'll really help alleviate some of the administrative tasks that we take care of in my office and free up some time to really focus on more research and writing. There are grant opportunities that we have had to pass up because we haven't had capacity.
Right.
How many people do you have in here right now?
Right now, it's me.
Yeah, well, this
Hot
year.
NASA.
Yeah, well, there's no way she can take on more grants at this point. She gets some people to support.
Right now it's her, and then there's half, we share a senior account clerk. And in a proposed budget, we'd share a senior account clerk, junior account.
And I'm just jumping down the way. And junior.
Junior account is the new position.
You
so
share that?
We share. It's working now. We've kind of talked about some of it, but right now the senior accountant is in my office and he splits his time 50-50. The junior accountant would do the same thing. Probably this position would reside with Ruth Ann, but then, once again, have to split work. So there's a natural time between the work that we do. Right now, the senior accountant does a lot of the grant reimbursing. Ruth Ann can tell you more about on the grant side what he does, but, tracking projects, putting in a reimbursement request, helping out all the project managers.
Yeah, he's also very involved in the change management plan for our grants management software. It's a pretty complex set of problems that we've had to resolve, particularly with the Munis software. We're trying to integrate both together so that they can work together and make all of our systems smoother. And he's really been integral in that process and helping to figure out how we can make it work.
On the revenue side, with our investment plan.
Yeah.
What is that money for? What is that money for?
You're referring to the 105,000?
160,000.
What was the last part of your question?
What can that money be used for?
There's 105,000 for, I'm actually not sure what, maybe John, you can explain.
Yeah, that would be all salary reimbursements that the mayor touched base on before.
That's what
Yeah, and the 105 is the consultant.
That's not revenue though. The revenue in your department's the American Rescue Plan grant, 40809, 168, 265. That's all salary reimbursement.
Salary reimbursement.
Correct.
That's all I had. You need some people in your department.
Yes,
So
You're hiring somebody, so.
yeah, hopefully we'll have this one.
Okay.
And,
Yeah, we would say that too, have time.
and grants manager.
And a grant time?
Yeah, my former position is the one that we're currently interviewing to fill.
Is it full?
That's a full-time job.
So you're gonna have 2 part-time and a full-time?
Yes.
Is that enough?
I think over the long term, it will work very well, especially once we have our ECIVIS grants management software up and running smoothly. It'll be a process to get everything to integrate together, but it will definitely be an improvement over how we've operated. Particularly just alleviating some of the administrative tasks that we have to handle day to day. Yeah.
would it be better to have one full-time person rather than 2 part-time?
I think it makes sense between John's office and my office because there is so much overlap between, it's all money related and keeping track of expenses and revenues that are particularly grants I think it does make a lot of sense to have two part-time people.
So is the job new positions for part-time I see in here?
Yes.
Okay.
It's a full-time position, it's just a split position.
Split position.
Position, okay. So it's full.
So half in your office, half in your.
You get all the benefits of it.
Yeah. Well, that's the way it's allocated. I mean, realistically, I think this person physically will be hopefully located with Ruth Ann. I have no room in my office for another employee. We're
You
physically out of space.
But there's another side to your desk.
It's actually news to me.
You gotta go
We'll have
out.
to carve out
Stack,
a cubicle
stack
in front.
Stack them.
Now, unfortunately, City Hall's not, it's not great for, carving out workspace, right? Because you're stuck with the historical, offices, and then the common workspace are kind of hard to split up. So, realistically, I think that this position would reside with Ruth Ann. I think there is a natural synergy with, that you having that body there, and, another body with me, because there's just so much tie-in.
Yeah. Hey, Ruth, can I ask you about one of these grants? Am I going to sleep? What? The Midtown parking lots, green infrastructure upgrade. What 3 lots are we looking at there? Do you know? It's not. No, it's not. Just actually, the project manager just walked in, John. Would you like to?
Midtown parking lots.
Yeah, which lots are we looking at up there?
So it's Cornell Street lot, the large one. It's the lot next to Sea Deli. And the last one is the lot just this side of Monkey Coast.
Oh.
Those 3.
So currently, Sea Deli is contracted with the city?
That lot is a city lot. It may not be very posted very well to that effect, but it is a city-owned lot.
Okay. Okay. Thanks.
All right, anything else specific to the grants budget? Anything else specific to the grants budget? All right, good. Thank you, Ruth Ann.
Can I read that?
All right, now we're moving to engineering, page 39 in your books.
Hi.
Hello, John.
Hello.
Any big things you want to tell us about?
You may notice under equipment, there's a $7,500 item where before we've not, we've not had something of that size. That's for a new plotter. Plotter in our department's at the end of life. Parts are no longer available. Nobody knows how to work on it. And so, it's a large format plotter for copying engineering plans. It also can scan in historical records to create digital files.
What is that for, Jeff?
It's a plotter. It's a large format printer plotter scanner.
And where is this at?
It's under the equipment line,
211.
$7,500.
Oh, okay.
This is something that will last many years.
Okay.
Also not, I don't know, you're not looking at capital tonight, but under capital, there is a $60,000 item for a sewer camera, which could be upgrades to the current trailer mounted or a separate standalone system. We're going to evaluate competing vendors. The current sewer camera is about 10 years old. We've done some rebuilds on it over time, but it's also, end of life, and it lacks some of the modern features that a newer camera would have.
I remember speaking to you about it last year and it didn't go into the laterals, right?
Right, that's one feature we could, include. The other, the ability to steer the camera in some of the larger pipes would be helpful. We don't have that ability now. So those are the sort of non-personnel things. I think most of the rest of the things in here are more or less similar to previous years, especially if you look pre-COVID. Under personnel, we're looking to do a net increase of one position. Our currently, our salaries are partly paid from multiple departments, but if the environmental specialist is now 25% engineering, under the proposed budget would go 100% to sustainability parks. And so that's a loss of a quote quarter position. The current engineering aide, which is a grade 11 position, would be changed to an engineering tech, which is a higher level position. Under the current scheme, that's a grade 17 position, which I already have one. So this would be changed to from a grade 11 to a grade 17. I'm not using those anymore.
But that brings that salary up higher than yours.
No, I think you might be looking at it. Those are two. There's a total of two full-times. Under engineering, it's 75% engineering and 25% sewer. So what you're seeing there is the salary of 90,000 is for one and a half positions.
Okay.
60,000, I think each.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
Can you come with the engineer tech to us?
I'm sorry?
What's the duties of engineer tech?
So the engineering technician has a wide range of duties. I guess I would divide what we do into projects and processes. So the processes are things that are recurring duties. Among those is a sewer pretreatment program where we have to go to certain industries and test the wastewater. There are annual reports that we support the wastewater treatment plant with. There's duties related to MS4 compliance, which has to do with erosion and sediment control. Those are sort of recurring, predictable things. And then in addition, it's project management. So those are the one-off projects like Broadway Streetscape, like Elmendorf Street Bridge, like Broadway Sewer, like the Henry Street and Franklin Street streetscapes.
And you don't have, who's in the project management?
Well, there's various, like I myself am project manager have been on the Broadway projects, on the Midtown Lots project that you mentioned. I have my engineering tech is managing the streetscape Henry and Franklin that I mentioned. We have federal aid projects we're managing in addition to that, including Wilbur Avenue and Flatbush Foxhall.
So you're looking for one additional project manager, looks like here?
Right, which would be a new description. I think one of the complaints in the past is that if you read the description of tech, it doesn't really describe project management duties. But the trend over time has been, especially in projects that have grants or grant funded, require more administrative skills and experience.
You're another one, you got salaries, right?
That's me, myself, I have not proposed for one, correct?
You're not proposed.
The other employees are.
What education level are they, your new employee?
All of these are, would require a 4-year degree in engineering or closely related field. could be a management type, there are degree programs that relate to that.
Don't actually, you know.
Thank you, Tony.
Yeah, that's one difference. The engineering aid position that's proposed to go away is right now written as a 2-year requirement.
And John, how long have you been with the city?
It was 3 years in September.
Thanks for sticking around.
You're doing a great job. You got so much on your plate. I have a project question. I saw Lieutenant's grant list.
Yes.
The streetscape at Schwenk at Fair.
Yep.
There's a proposal for a traffic circle.
Perhaps even 2. Roundabouts.
How would you have 2 roundabouts for Schwenk?
Yeah, one at Frog Alley and one at the Plaza entrance / Fair Street.
And is that up for design yet?
Yes, it's been under design for roughly a year. We've met with, we've been meeting with stakeholders and specifically the credit union, bank, obviously the Plaza owners, Kingstonian interests. There's also been an outreach effort to the larger community, which when I say complexity of the projects, you know, in the past, you know, the engineer would draw a set of plans and the contractor would get it and the public would find out, oh, you know, this was happening.
Right.
Now we go through public information processes on these major projects, form committees, do outreach, you know, in multiple languages. So when I say that's been under design for a year, those are some of the steps that go into that.
In the Kingstonian project, you know, we've been talking ad nauseum about, you know, the street, the plaza, but I haven't heard anything about the sewer and water.
Is this related to the budget?
Yeah.
So, sorry, it's late. Cinnamon, you know. Any other questions? Any other questions about the budget for you?
Yeah, down on the Rondo Creek.
Steve wants to take it out and dock himself.
There we go. 10 feet under the water. Okay.
All right.
Thank you.
John, done with engineering?
Thank you.
Thanks, John.
Thank you, John. That is Corporation Council, page 35.
That's still there.
What was that comment about capital plans? We're not discussing capital stuff now?
Kevin?
Hello, can you guys hear me?
And we can hear you.
Okay. All right, so it's getting late, so I'm just going to point out the things that stand out in my mind. Recommended 2022. You see that number there? Now go to actual for 2020.
Yeah, come on, regular pay.
After you go to the total expense line, that's the bottom line on 35. Recommended for 2022. And now you can go back and look at the actual for 2020.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you see the reduction in the budget line.
Yeah.
Is there any questions that I need to answer?
Why is there a reduction?
Because there's going to be less money spent on consultants.
Okay.
Is that wishful thinking, or is that because we have different staffing?
Part-time employees.
The cases involving the consultants have progressed.
And we're also shifting from a full-time assistant court counsel to part-time, right?
1 full-time to 2 part-timers, yes.
But it won't show up here in the budget.
They're on line 112,
Yeah.
part-time employees, their names,
Okay.
their names will be in the budget.
The part-time employees would be 2.
Yeah.
That's proposed.
And so what's the rationale for 2 part-time employees instead of 1 full-time?
It's easier to cover more areas.
Oh, you mean like legal specialties?
You can break it up. It's just a different approach.
Yeah.
Kevin, you sound so willing to be here tonight.
I love you guys. I'm tired.
So are we.
I know, and that's why I'm trying to be as succinct as possible.
2 part-time. All right.
I don't have any more questions.
I'm scared to ask it.
Listen, all right, listen. Feel free. I am at your disposal. Ask whatever question you'd like.
I'm just curious, this gain sale of other property, $450,000?
Let the tourists go.
Where are you?
Line 41050.
That's the visitor center sale.
Oh, okay, so
For this year, not next year.
why is it showing up here in the court council?
It's technically, that line item is in the department that they include in their budget. It's not 1420, it's in, I believe 1364 tax acquired property.
Oh,
is
okay.
the department number,
All right,
which is a different page in the budget, but they oversee that line item.
all right.
Yeah, it's on page, I'll pull it up. Page 30, sorry.
It's on the variance sheet, that's why.
Yeah, it's on. Second. It's on page 32 of the printed budget.
Any questions?
I don't have any more questions, Kevin.
Listen, come on, Rita. Listen, Rita, if there's something you want to ask me, you go ahead.
I'm
you
glad we could make you smile.
No, you guys make me smile a lot. You do. You really do. Do you guys does anyone have any other question?
I'm good.
I'm good.
I'm good.
Good night, everyone.
All right.
Good night.
Thanks, Kevin.
That was it. That's it, right?
City
That's
clerk?
it.
What about the city clerk?
Good night.
Oh, yeah? Okay, for a change back.
And then we got Monday. We got that.
Yeah.